To save the girl's life, the crown prince, who had been slumbering for years, finally awoke from his dream. And this was also the first time he wanted to give his all to protect the person he loved. A young man, single for 80 years, fell in love with an 18-year-old girl in the prime of her youth. Just by holding hands and sleeping, the old man excitedly gave up his 17-figure fortune. It turned out the girl had a special ability. Through simple physical contact, she could enter another person's dream. And this time, what she transformed into was the first love the old man had missed for 90 years. Meeting again after so many years reignited the passion he had sealed away for so long. Looking at that head of jet black white hair and those ruby-like blue eyes, he completely came to his senses and resolutely decided to chase his wife to the ends of the earth. Watching the old man beaming with joy, Eileen experienced the greatness of love for the first time. Having done a good deed, she prepared to thoroughly enjoy the feeling of being wealthy. So, without hesitation, she prepared 9987 special delicacies. But before she could take 2 bites, a group of men in black burst through the door aggressively. They clearly had ill intentions. Her assistant thought about finding an excuse to send them away. But who would have guessed that the moment the man took off his hood, both of them were completely stunned. It was actually His Majesty the Emperor in person. Rumor has it you can enter people's dreams. Can you wake up my comatose son? Eileen pinched her small face in disbelief. It hurt. It seemed this wasn't a dream. Once she reacted, she quickly asked her assistant to prepare tea and invited the emperor to sit down and explain the situation. It turned out the crown prince had been asleep for 2 whole years, suspected to be the return of a curse from 500 years ago. The emperor at that time, driven by greed, waged war against the dissentient people. Soldiers slaughtered them for 7 days and 7 nights. Blood stained the earth red, and screams echoed through the sky. Watching his people die before his eyes one by one, the tribe shaman sacrificed his own life to curse the imperial family to eternal slumber. The emperor at the time thought the other party was just making empty threats. But unexpectedly, from that day on, newly born children were incredibly frail. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would fall into a long sleep on the day they came of age. From youth to old age, they would never wake up until they breathed their last. This resulted in the imperial family having no heirs for many years, forcing the throne to be passed to a cousin, who became the current emperor. He thought the curse would end there, but he was dragged into the abyss once again by the current crown prince's coma. Just when the emperor had nowhere left to turn for medical help, he heard that a girl had cured a noble's insomnia. Since that was the case, waking someone from a long slumber should be a piece of cake. Hearing this, the girl was so angry she wanted to curse. Are insomnia and a curse the same thing? Besides, she was also a descendant of Dissentia. Leaving aside national humiliation and family hatred, just the insults and persecution her people had suffered over the years left her with zero interest. Although that was what she thought in her head, facing so many guards, she decided to just think about it and let it go. But the emperor gave her no chance to refuse. I will ask you one last time. Can you accept this commission? At the same time, the guards pressed forward. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a naked threat. But when under someone else's roof, one has to bow their head. Tylee also looked at her sincerely, his eyes full of pleading, practically saying, "Grandma, I'm begging you on my knees." The girl sighed helplessly, but to stay alive, she had to accept the commission. However, she had one condition. If she succeeded, the emperor must allow the Dissentia people to move freely. Hearing this, the emperor's face instantly turned dark. Eileen was scared silly, thinking she was going to say goodbye to her head today. As a result, the emperor just sighed slightly. Compared to the kingdom's legacy, what did national hatred matter? Although doing so carried great risk, he ultimately agreed to her condition. He also stated that as long as she could wake the prince, he would additionally grant her a 19-figure fortune, probably enough to furnish an imperial palace. The next second, Tylee fainted from excitement. But what Eileen didn't expect was that the outwardly gentle and elegant crown prince was secretly a perverted serial killer. Not only did he chop off his own father's head, but the maid beside him was a headless female corpse. Could it be that he liked things without heads? The boy killed 9987 people every day, and every single one of them was his biological father. Over 10 years, he had lost count of how many fathers he had killed. Standing on a hillside piled with human bones, he felt not a shred of fear, but rather an inexplicable pleasure. Eileen watched him from the side, never expecting that the outwardly gentle and elegant crown prince was secretly a perverted serial killer. A chill surged into her heart, but before she could react, the man extended his demonic palm towards her. Just moments ago, Eileen had accepted His Majesty the Emperor's commission, preparing to use her dream-walking ability to save the comatose crown prince. To increase the success rate, she asked the Emperor about the prince's preferences. But as his father, he stated there was no need for him to know such useless things. And the only person who knew, the wet nurse, had been put to death by him yesterday. Eileen held her head, speechless. What about the crown prince's friends? At these words, the Emperor instantly fell silent. After a while, he said with a cold face, "He has no friends." Hearing this, Eileen felt that maybe it wasn't so bad to just let the prince keep sleeping. Why should a lonely old soul come back? But thinking of her dissentient compatriots, she thought, if I don't enter hell, who will? The day before going to the palace, Eileen deliberately disguised herself from maid number 1 to maid number 2, leaving Tylee speechless. However, he immediately sighed and decided to personally dress and groom Eileen. A head of jet-black red hair paired with an elegant green dress made her look like a lively elf, spirited and graceful. Soon, a knight appeared before Eileen. Although the other party had been eavesdropping, Eileen didn't care at all, because as long as she had snacks in her hand, she was full of fighting spirit. 500 meters out the door, she had devoured 3 baskets of buns and 5 bags of cookies. She also scarfed down 7 chocolate cakes. Afterward, she took the knight to eat her favorite cat grass stewed chicken feathers. The knight was dumbfounded. Was that kind of thing even edible? He immediately took off his helmet, indicating he wasn't hungry. That handsome face made Eileen eat 2 fewer mouthfuls of rice. She didn't expect even the knight to be so handsome. To look at him a bit longer, the girls started chatting about the crown prince again. Unfortunately, the man also knew very little. He only knew that the crown prince was knowledgeable, and the matter of his long slumber had been kept secret from the outside world. So, before entering the palace, necessary disguises were mandatory, and they could only enter through a secret passage. This made Eileen, who liked escape rooms, very excited. After eating and drinking her fill, Eileen hoped to visit her mother one more time. The girl knew very well that this commission boded ill rather than well. Given the Emperor's temperament, if the crown prince woke up, fine. If not, she would surely die. If her mother were still alive, she would certainly be able to offer plenty of advice. Thinking of this, Eileen choked up for a moment. Don't be fooled by her usual carefree manner. In truth, just surviving had exhausted all her strength. But this time, the fate of all her compatriots was at stake. Forgive me, mother, I have no choice. Jaimeo couldn't help but feel sorry for her too. However, all he could do was offer 2 or 3 words of comfort. Passing through the dark passage, they arrived in front of a gloomy wooden door. Although scared out of her wits, she could only brace herself and go in. But the moment the door opened, Eileen was stunned. The 24K pure gold floor blinded her titanium alloy dog eyes. At this moment, the plan had officially begun. First, have Tylee disguise himself as the crown prince to handle various social occasions, while she secretly treated the real prince. This made Eileen worry a little. How could that kid act? Suddenly, footsteps approached. Eileen excitedly got up to look. My handsome face. She saw the knight holding a beautiful man in his arms, a head of jet-black white hair, like the big wolf dog next door. For some reason, this scene made the girl blush. This was simply a sleeping beauty. After scarfing down a big mouthful of chocolate cake, she pretended to be serious and took off her leather gloves. Though in her heart she had long wanted to devour this big wolf dog completely. The moment she held his hand, Eileen successfully entered the man's spiritual world. Unlike what she imagined, the prince's spiritual world had not a trace of color. The sky was dim, and even the rain was the color of ink. Looking down at herself, holy crap, why am I not human? Logically, I should have turned into what the dream owner most wants to see. Suddenly, eerie music rang out in the palace. Following the music's guidance, she saw a scene she would never forget. Before her appeared a mountain peak made of skulls. Scared, she ran for her life until she had fled 9,000 miles, still shaken and afraid to look back. But when she turned her head, she encountered a scene that scared 3 of her souls and 7 of her spirits away. A headless giant dragon suddenly appeared, dragon roars emitting from its neck. And facing it was the crown prince with his jet-black white hair. Before she could recover from her terror, a sword flash suddenly severed the giant dragon. The person who struck was the cold-faced crown prince. The falling rain of blood dyed the sky red. However, the boy showed not a trace of fear. Instead, strange laughter came from his mouth. He was muttering, "Dear father, I killed you again. Looking forward to meeting next time." This shocking scene left Eileen stunned in place. She didn't expect the gentle and elegant crown prince to actually be a perverted serial killer. Suddenly, a chill struck. Before the girl could recover, the crown prince was already standing in front of her, staring at her. It was clearly a black and white world, but she saw a touch of blood red in the man's eyes. Killing intent locked onto her firmly. She dare not move, nor could she move. The next second, the man's large hand crushed the white snake she had transformed into. Her consciousness instantly cleared. Eileen was somewhat in disbelief, and even more unwilling to accept it. After eating 7,000 mouthfuls of rice, she tried to infiltrate the man's dream again. But this time she saw an even more terrifying scene. A headless maid carrying a plate of fruit walked slowly toward her. The girl had no head, but was the boy's love of a lifetime. He planned to keep her by his side for all eternity, talking to her every day, telling her how many people he had killed today. The girl never answered, nor did she understand the meaning of killing. But every time the man returned, she would serve the same plate of fruit. This world had no meaning for the girl, but that boy became her only light. She thought life would pass plainly like this, but on this day, a strange white snake entered. It opened its mouth, saying it wanted to wake the boy from his dream, preparing to take him away from this place. The girl couldn't imagine life without him, and this was the first time she experienced anger. She really wanted to kill that white snake. Just moments ago, Eileen infiltrated the crown prince's dream for the second time. As always, it was black and white. Eerie music surrounded her. Looking down at herself, Eileen was speechless. Sure enough, she had turned into a little white snake again. Was there really not a single human being he missed? Pushing open the heavy door, the girl once again saw the man who terrified her. He was leaning against the window, his brow incredibly delicate, but his eyes remained cold and murderous. The man slowly turned his head, greeting her warmly. "You shouldn't be something I created, right?" Eileen was slightly stunned upon hearing this. Did he know this was a dream world? Before she could react, the man had already walked up to her. Unlike the immediate execution last time, the man gently extended his palm, inviting Eileen to come up. The girl froze. For some reason, she unconsciously climbed up. Looking at the handsome face in front of her, she felt her infatuation acting up again. Just then, a maid appeared carrying fruit. Eileen took a closer look, and most of her soul flew away. That woman actually had no head. The crown prince, on the other hand, was very calm. He picked up an apple and asked the white snake, "Should I eat this?" The girl then realized that the apple was actually a special clue, a signpost guiding the man into the depths of his soul. She looked at the man's handsome face and asked weakly, "Do you know what will happen after you eat it?" But as soon as she said it, she regretted it. She never expected she could speak. Seeing the man's pupils gradually turn red and a strange purple mist descend, she screamed internally that this was bad. Because when he slaughtered the dragon earlier, he had this exact expression. He wasn't going to kill her, was he? But the next second, the man laughed maniacally. This fickleness almost made Eileen cry from fear, especially with a headless maid nearby. Was this a horror movie shoot? The girl's brain was working furiously. She really wanted to tell the crown prince that she was an outsider, but there were taboos in dreams. If she said it, the enforcers in the dream would try every means to expel or kill her. But the person involved clearly already knew this was a dream. And that maid had no head, so she probably couldn't hear me speak. So she made up her mind and roughly explained the sequence of events, stating she would find a way to wake him up. But as soon as the words fell, the maid beside them suddenly erupted with intense killing intent. Fortunately, the man stopped her in time. Luckily, it was only for a moment, and the maid turned and left. It scared her into a cold sweat. Sure enough, words related to wake were taboo here. The man obviously realized this too, smiling and suggesting she avoid that word in the future, otherwise her life would be in danger. Eileen was initially a bit touched that the man would save her, but the man's next sentence almost angered her to death. I still have many questions to ask you. It won't be too late for you to die after I'm done asking. The girl really wanted to curse him this time. Your current state is very complex. You probably won't wake up that easily. As soon as she finished speaking, the maid erupted with strong, killing intent again. Eileen quickly shut her mouth. This was too damn scary. Mom, I want to go home. Through her gradual guidance, the Crown Prince finally understood that these fruits were the key to sobering up. He picked up an apple and examined it carefully. After a long while, he said something that shocked Eileen for a whole year. Come seduce me a little. What the heck? Eileen's CPU crashed directly. Brother, even for pole dancing, you have to give me background music. He was the Empire's sole heir, sitting on a 17-figure fortune. Yet he was hitting on a white snake. Come seduce me a little. Hearing this, Eileen went numb. Was this kid that perverted? Not even sparing a snake. Even for belly dancing, there needs to be some music. The girl looked speechless, but still stated, although I don't know what you experienced in your childhood. If your heart is full of pain, I can stay by your side until you get used to it. Hearing this, the boy froze. Deep in his memory, someone had vaguely said the same thing. But in the end, her head became a birthday gift from his father to him. Yes, she died. Thinking of this, the Crown Prince gently raised his arm, smiling at her. At least I won't feel bored anymore. Then, without hesitation, he took a bite of that black apple. With a crunch, Eileen slowly opened her eyes. In a daze, she seemed to see a green smiling face, scaring the girl's eyeballs into dancing. It turned out the man was the imperial physician of the palace, here specifically to give her a massage to relieve the fatigue of the past few days. Looking at the knight's cold eyes nearby, as if he would tear the two apart the next second, Eileen quickly changed the subject. I think I know the reason for the Crown Prince's slumber. It turned out none of this was a curse. He had simply hidden in his own paradise to rest, unknown what had stimulated him. The Crown Prince's spiritual world was extremely strange. Not only was there no color, but all living things inside were headless. It was the first time a knight had heard such a theory, and he couldn't help but frown. But to complete his majesty's task, after letting the girl rest for a moment, he had to urge her to complete the mission again. The girl was quite speechless at this rigid knight. She had wanted to change the subject, but in the next second, she was pulled back to reality by a cold, killing intent. Helplessly, she could only take the prince's hand. But unexpectedly, Eileen could not detect the Crown Prince's consciousness. With no other choice, the girl could only request to increase the area of physical contact, such as hugging him. But what greeted her was the knight's murderous gaze. Helplessly, she could only explain to this stubborn ox. Since treatment is required, naturally every feasible method must be tried. But unexpectedly, this ox miraculously agreed. So she flashed to the bedside, excitedly lifted the quilt, and then inched closer to the man's handsome face. Looking at the man's handsome features and those pectoral muscles comparable to a 36D, Eileen unconsciously blushed. At this moment, her brain had already concocted a fast and furious drama. But she was quickly interrupted by the knight. She took a deep breath. She attempted to step into the Crown Prince's dreamscape again. A golden light flashed by. Replacing it was yet another black and white scene. But unlike last time, she was no longer a white snake. Instead, she had turned into a round little chicken. The Crown Prince looked at her dotingly, liking her immensely. First, he touched her all over, then expressed a desire to take a bite. Eileen was quite speechless. Do you want to eat a juicy chicken head? By the way, how did you recognize me? The man smiled and indicated that it was because she was the only creature here besides him that had a head. Good grief, Eileen really didn't want to say anything more. The man didn't know why, but every time Eileen entered, his body would become very warm. The air would also become much softer. Eileen immediately thought of their posture in reality. Her cheeks instantly turned bright red. The Crown Prince told her that ever since eating that apple, this place had turned into his mother's favorite garden. Moreover, he could no longer control anything here. Hearing this, Eileen instantly understood. He had already entered the depths of his own heart. With the Crown Prince's power gone, entering his dreamscape in the future would become even more difficult. Everything in the dream is not accidental. Now, to conquer this place, one needs to find the most precious memory or item here, just like the apple last time. The boy placed her on the table. Can I wake up this way? Eileen hurriedly indicated that this was taboo. Seeing Eileen's teary-eyed look, The Crown Prince laughed until he cried at her cute appearance. They dare not kill me. Every time he mentioned the word wake up, those headless creatures would bring many things he liked. They seem to hope I never wake up. Eileen breathed a sigh of relief and began guiding him to do some things his mother liked. For example, creating some beautiful flowers. The Crown Prince hesitated for a moment. Although his memory was a bit blurry, he still vaguely remembered the appearance of a certain flower. Then he slowly pointed his finger towards the flower bed. Several black and white manjusaka flowers flashed into existence in his palm, and the language of this flower represents death. The boy had never experienced motherly love. Just as he came of age, his mother was executed, and he was force-fed 3 tons of poison every day, even though he was the sole heir to the empire. He lived a life worse than a dog, and all of this was thanks to his kind father, all for the sake of grooming him into a cold-blooded, ruthless beast. As the next emperor, he was not allowed to have any emotions. Even if he had to kill himself in the end, the emperor would have no regrets. Finally, when his wet nurse was boiled into soup by his father and fed to him, the boy went completely mad. He gave up the blue sky and white clouds, gave up the love of his life, and fled into the chaotic dream world. He slept for 2 years. Despite having a cheerful and innocent appearance, inside was a beast that could go crazy at any moment. Even the maids around him were headless corpses. His favorite flower was the manjusaka, representing death. But such a crazy crown prince was now in heat over a group of animals. It turned out these animals were all transformed from the same elf girl, and the man had already fallen in love with her. But just then, the man's madness suddenly flared up. He strangled the girl's neck tightly. The immense pressure made the girl unable to move. Just moments ago, Eileen had transformed into a small bird and successfully opened the door to the Crown Prince's heart. He didn't care about a 17-figure fortune, nor did 3,000 beauties catch his eye. He just wanted to find his mother back, that mother who once loved him deeply. Looking at his mother's favorite flowers, scenes of warmth appeared before him. But everything he cherished was cruelly crushed by his own father. Seeing his mother's head made into a gift, a strong killing intent surged in his heart. He wanted to kill the man in front of him. He reached out, but mistook Eileen for his father. The girl was suffocated by this sudden terror. She wanted to scream, but couldn't make a sound. 20 years of abuse and torture had driven his hatred to an unimaginable level. At this moment, his scarlet eyes held none of their usual tenderness. Just like that, she was killed once again. Consciousness returned to reality. Eileen experienced the feeling of being crushed for the first time. Her body had long reached its limit, lying motionless on the bed. Fortunately, the imperial physician was guarding her 24 hours a day, helping to relieve much of her pain. Recovered, Eileen bowed to the man to express her gratitude. But unexpectedly, the man was not only overly familiar, but also had a mouth so chatty it made one want to hack him to death directly. Moreover, he suddenly appeared behind the girl, scaring Eileen half to death. She shouted for Brother Knight to save her. Hearing the noise inside, the knight also reacted. Eileen exclaimed that the imperial physician was crazy. The imperial physician, however, claimed he just gave the woman a full-body spa. The knight was very repulsed by their long-winded behavior, but in the next second, the imperial physician appeared in front of him. Before he could react, the physician started groping him up and down. "Your pectoral muscles are really nice." The knight was also flushed red with embarrassment by this perverted behavior. After 2 punches, the imperial physician finally settled down. Eileen was also speechless facing this situation. It was truly a miracle this guy hadn't been executed. The knight, however, stated that the imperial physician was usually a taciturn gentleman. Eileen couldn't believe that scenario at all. Just then, the door was pushed open. Eileen turned her head in surprise, only to find that Tylee, who was impersonating the crown prince, had returned. Eileen threw herself into the man's arms. She thought she would never see him alive again in this life. But before she could be happy for a few seconds, Tylee's face turned bitter. He tremblingly stated that he seemed to have caused trouble. It turned out that while he was pretending to be the crown prince in bed today, a woman suddenly barged in. She immediately threw herself into the man's arms. This left Tylee, single for 30 years, at a loss. Seeing his expression, the girl immediately displayed her top-tier manipulative skills. "Don't you want to see me?" But Tylee had absolutely no feelings for her and could only awkwardly brush her off, hoping she would leave quickly. But upon hearing the other party call him by his name, the woman completely broke down. The woman actually demanded Tylee call her sweetie. Tali also broke down. He had never seen a woman take cheap manipulation to such an extent. Seeing no reaction from the man for a long time, the woman suddenly felt that today's crown prince seemed a bit different. Usually at this time, there would be kissing and hugging, followed by a 3-day, 3-night home run. With no other options, she could only make a tactical retreat for now. Who knew that as soon as the woman left, the knight looked at him gloomily. 2.5 minutes into the game, and he had bullied the crown prince's fiancée to tears. This was a capital offense in the empire. Just then, a man with black hair and black eyes walked in. He confidently stated that he would comfort Miss Anderson. After all, he was a professional at handling women. Hearing this, Tali excitedly grasped the other's hand, expressing that he would never forget this great kindness. But unexpectedly, the man just smiled slightly, then grabbed Tali's waist. If you really want to thank me, repay me with your body. Hearing this, Eileen was also speechless. Why was everyone so perverted? She couldn't help but look at the imperial physician, Haggis. Then Eileen stated it was time for her to work. So, under Tali's astonished gaze, the girl climbed back onto the bed and burrowed into the crown prince's arms again. With a flash of golden light, she stepped into the boy's dreamscape once more. But this time was completely different from before. Not only had the whole world become colorful, but the garden was also planted with many bright flowers. The crown prince reached out to hold her in his arms, but Eileen was still angry. She kicked him away and jumped to the ground. She told him with utmost seriousness, "Your Highness, do you know that kicking me out of the dream causes the real me to suffer unbearable pain all over my body?" Hearing these words, the boy felt a bit guilty and tried to approach her. "Don't come over, stay away from me." Separated by a few meters, the crown prince was silent for a while. Then he began to tell Eileen about his childhood past and apologize for his behavior. The boy didn't know why he was telling a stranger these things. Perhaps he had been lonely for too long. That heart, sealed in dust for so long, actually cracked open a sliver because of her existence. The girl listened carefully, unable to stop tears from streaming down her face. Who would have thought that the outwardly glamorous crown prince was secretly suffering inhuman torture from his father? "Don't leave, okay?" The girl's heart raced wildly from this sudden scene. Then she extended her pink paw, climbing up the boy's body bit by bit. "I will stay with you. Stay with you to protect the things you cherish. So please don't give up, okay?" As soon as the words fell, the crown prince suddenly kissed the girl's lips gently. In an instant, Eileen was stunned. It felt as if something long sealed in her heart quietly bloomed. The girl hadn't expected that the crown prince worth hundreds of billions didn't love his empire, didn't even love his father, but somehow fell in love with a silly, cute fox, and a sickly little foodie at that. Seeing him kiss her, Eileen blushed deeply. "Are you willing to live with me forever?" Hearing this, the girl hurriedly pushed him away. "After you get out, there will be many girls throwing themselves at you. Besides, you already have a charming and beautiful fiancée." The crown prince looked at her intently. "No, I only need you." At this moment, Eileen was stunned. "Whether you turn into a rabbit or anything else, once I've set my heart on you, I will persist like a madman. Whether it's the end of the road or the end of the world, it won't change." Eileen was very confused. Being oppressed and bullied since childhood had long become her daily bread. But why was this boy so gentle to her? Looking into the boy's eyes, she didn't know why her heart felt so warm. She jumped to the ground, stating seriously and solemnly that she was a woman, not a fox. The crown prince listened, just chuckled lightly, and beckoned with his hand. "I know all that, although in my heart, I indeed didn't treat you as a human." This sentence made Eileen's face puff up like a football with anger. She wanted to get mad at him, but the feeling of this kid petting her was really comfortable. She unconsciously started wagging her tail. The crown prince pinched here and there, finally asking the question he had been anticipating for a long time. "What is your real name?" Eileen hadn't expected him to ask this. After all, after the Descentia tribe was invaded by the Empire, to prevent their resurgence, the Descentia language became taboo. The only thing passed down was the tribe's name. So hearing this question, Eileen felt an indescribable complexity in her heart. After pondering for a long time, she slowly said, "My real name is a dream woven with golden light." The crown prince looked at the fox in front of him, the corners of his mouth curving into a smile. Although the name is a bit long, it fits unexpectedly well. He couldn't help but play with her for a while longer. The scene behind them actually underwent a new change. A castle appeared out of thin air in the huge garden. But such a magnificent building was not created by the crown prince. That meant this layer of the dreamscape had been conquered by the two of them. And the condition for conquering, it was probably the crown prince rediscovering the emotion of love. Walking to the castle gate. The gate creaked open from the inside. Guarding the entrance were indeed a group of headless maids and butlers, and there were many of them. Seeing this scene, Eileen trembled all over with fear. She thought that now the world had color, she wouldn't be so afraid anymore. Who knew it would be even more terrifying? The crown prince noticed her state and considerately held her in his arms. The room was filled with a cold, killing intent. Eileen tilted her head. Jet black hair and sapphire-like red eyes. Wasn't this the crown prince as a child? This cute appearance made Eileen's jaw drop. The crown prince, however, noticed the man beside him, but he immediately turned and left. He really couldn't muster the slightest interest in this man. If there was any, it was monstrous killing intent. The emperor was still very young then. He slowly walked up to the boy. With a gloomy expression, he ordered him, "Jump down from upstairs now. Father will catch you. If you trust me, then prove it to me." The young crown prince trembled with fear, but he chose to trust his father. Pushing off lightly with his feet, the intense feeling of weightlessness terrified him to the extreme. But just then, the emperor took 2 steps back. The boy also noticed this scene. He looked at the empty ground in horror. The next second, he crashed heavily onto the ground. Blood stained the ground red. He curled up his body, unable to move for a long time. Eileen was dumbfounded by this scene, but the emperor turned and walked away without any lingering attachment. Watching the man pass him by, the crown prince's world shook violently. Eileen looked at him anxiously, but what responded to her was a pair of blood-red eyes filled with killing intent. Sure enough, in the next second, she was expelled by the man again. Just because she was too ugly, the 18-year-old empress was ordered to death by the 80-year-old emperor. Her head was presented to celebrate his son's birthday. Unexpectedly, not only was the son unhappy, but he also wanted to kill him to avenge his mother. As a result, he was forced by the emperor to jump off a building instead. Seeing his son fall with broken bones and a bleeding head, the emperor laughed. "You must remember today's pain. Although you are the crown prince, the only one you can rely on in this world is yourself." After saying that, he turned and left without looking back. Eileen was scared silly. Just how perverted must one be to speak of treating human life like grass so matter-of-factly? Looking at such a brutal father, scenes of sadness and bitterness floated before her eyes. The boy finally erupted. A cold, killing intent burst forth from his body. Eileen wanted to stop him, but was kicked out of the dream by the boy. The girl dragged her exhausted body, looking at the man with regret. She had just managed to arouse the man's yearning for life. Now everything was back to square one. Just then, a majestic and cold voice came from behind. Eileen was startled upon hearing it. Turning her head, she saw the emperor's icy countenance. "Can you explain why you did this? If your answer does not satisfy me, then there is no need for you to remain alive." Hearing this, Eileen hurriedly and tremblingly explained, "The crown prince's inner world is hidden too deeply. Simply holding hands is not enough to enter his inner world." The emperor clicked his tongue upon hearing this, indicating that the prince was truly a useless piece of trash. He couldn't be bothered to listen to such useless nonsense and flicked the cigar in his hand. Amidst the girl's awkward, ingratiating smile, he gave a deadline of 2 weeks. Eileen was startled to hear this. He was hurt so deeply. 2 weeks was simply impossible to complete the task. But the emperor didn't care about that at all. If you fail, only death can atone for your incompetence. Eileen was so shocked by his ruthlessness that she couldn't speak. "You once taught the crown prince not to trust anyone. Even if I succeed, I presume you won't let me leave alive, will you?" The emperor hadn't expected her to know even this, but he still indicated that as long as she succeeded, there was a possibility of leaving alive. If she failed, death was certain. Having said that, he crooked his finger, signaling the knight to come forward. Then, under their terrified gazes, he slowly extinguished his cigarette, but in the knight's palm, completely disregarding the knight's excruciating pain. He then stood up unhurriedly. "By the way, that piece of trash seemed to like snow once." With that, he turned and left without looking back. Eileen didn't know how much truth there was in the words of such an incompetent father. Seeing the emperor leave, the two quickly went forward to check on the knight's injury. Looking at the knight's calm face, they both suspected he wasn't made of flesh and blood. After treating the knight's wound, The exhausted Eileen devoured an entire strawberry cake. Her constitution, which allowed her to eat 8 tons a day without gaining weight, was truly enviable. This time, surprisingly, the night didn't rush her. But upon hearing that the palace was full of delicious food and the menu wouldn't repeat for a whole year, Eileen swore she would eat every delicacy in the palace. Therefore, in order to live until then, she decided to take action immediately. Just like that, she climbed into the crown prince's bed once again. But then she asked a question that made everyone's jaw drop. Can I take off his clothes? After her explanation, the three helplessly agreed. Looking at the robust pectoral muscles before her, Eileen was practically drooling. Why did she feel like such a pervert? But she was immediately caught by the night. Helplessly, she could only close her eyes. She entered the crown prince's dream world again. Unlike the birdsong and fragrant flowers from before, this time, what came into view was a stark white world of ice and snow. And this time, she had transformed into a white dog. This cute appearance made her unable to resist barking like a dog. Finally, after looking around for what felt like ages, she spotted the crown prince in the courtyard. Immediately, she greeted the man in a dog-like manner. The man slowly turned his head, only to find a dog's mouth full of drool. But before the man could react, the girl had already pinned him down. The girl hadn't expected that she would actually develop feelings for this perverted prince. Just seeing him made her unable to resist throwing herself into his arms, treating his face as her exclusive gift. Seeing the happy smile on the boy's face, the girl suddenly realized she was acting very dog-like and couldn't help but cough dryly twice. But then she was tightly embraced by the man again. That sprawled-out posture made the woman turn as red as a tomato. Thinking of herself in reality, currently stroking the other's pectoral muscles, Eileen couldn't help but avert her gaze. The man didn't care about any of that, gently stroking the girl's head. At this moment, he just wanted to hold the woman in his arms forever. That warm feeling was a joy he had never possessed in his life. Unknown how much time passed until they were exhausted. The man finally let her go. Then the two set foot in the castle again, hoping to find some useful clues. But whenever the current emperor was mentioned, the man would unconsciously turn his head away, indicating he had no interest in that person's affairs. Hearing this, Eileen didn't push it. She lay on the ground, trying to find a breakthrough. Unknowingly, she had left the crown prince far behind. The man asked her curiously, "Are you very familiar with the palace roads?" Eileen didn't answer. Finally, the person and the dog stopped in front of a large gate. Eileen scratched desperately at the door, signaling the crown prince to open it. Pushing it open, there was surprisingly a team of maids inside, and it was they who had completed the various desserts on the table. Seeing the excited look in the woman's eyes, the crown prince finally understood. He leaned down and flicked her forehead. They agreed to look for clues, but she was only thinking about eating. Yet the girl didn't care, shaking her head frantically and acting cute. Then she swaggered towards the dining table and consciously put her paws on it. The crown prince was amused by her silly appearance and didn't stop her. Watching her swaying body, he actually felt an inexplicable fondness. The man didn't know why either. Unknowingly, it seemed he had fallen in love with her. He didn't care about her appearance. He just wanted to live quietly with her, to delight in what she delighted in. Seeing her eager look, he had the urge to spoil her. The man stepped forward and stroked her head, and couldn't help but play with that small face. Then he ordered the servants to bring pastries. Even though she knew they wouldn't attack, Eileen was still trembling with fear. The crown prince also laughed seeing her silly and cute appearance, because she couldn't hide herself at all like that. But before he could finish speaking, a sharp pain shot through his head. The man knelt on the ground in pain, as if he would explode the next second. But then he walked uncontrollably towards the door. Seeing this, Eileen hurriedly used her body to support him. It turned out he had recovered part of his memory again. He knew his name was Mel. He knew he liked snow. He also knew he had happy playmates in his childhood. Watching the two playing and frolicking, Eileen was curious where the man was. But then the sound of running came from behind. Looking back, she found a handsome, innocent, and cute little boy. It was the crown prince as a child. Eileen couldn't help but stare in awe. Such a shy crown prince. She really wanted to have him. But just then, the crown prince walked in another direction without looking back. Eileen found it very strange and couldn't help but look back. He clearly looked very happy. Why did His Majesty say he had no playmates? And she hadn't seen them from beginning to end. Combining this with the Crown Prince's reaction, Eileen guessed that they might have already been executed by His Majesty. Just as she wanted to go forward and comfort him, the man turned his head, his face beaming with a happy smile. I really want to hug you, but he was ruthlessly rejected by Eileen. Then he expressed his desire to see her human form. Of course, Eileen couldn't do that. She could only proudly state that her hair was the same color as the fox she transformed into. Also, her hair was very long, naturally curly, and she had pale green eyes. But before she could finish, she was brutally attacked by the man's sixth sense. I have a feeling you're a shorty. Having her sore spot poked, she immediately declared she was not a short winter melon. Seeing the Crown Prince's expression as if he had discovered a new continent, Eileen knew. Sigh. There would be one more person mocking her height in the future. But before Eileen could recover from her thoughts, the man suddenly leaned close to her face and casually conjured a flower wreath leash. Eileen cried, indicating she had dignity too. Walking in the palace corridor, Eileen was attracted by a white-haired woman. The one below her is the Crown Prince, right? Then that woman should be the Crown Prince's mother. Eileen wanted to investigate further to see if she could find any useful clues. But she was pulled away by the man, who said it wasn't a precious memory. But Eileen could tell. Both these memories were happy moments from the Crown Prince's childhood. But why did he not dare to recall them? Eileen couldn't help but fall into deep thought. But just then, their footsteps suddenly stopped. The surrounding scene suddenly became distorted. When they came to their senses, they were already in the next scene. At this time, the Crown Prince was reading a book, but no happiness could be felt from his expression. He stared fixedly at the macarons on the table, as if he had made up his mind. He slowly picked up a teacup and drank in one gulp. The next second, under Eileen's astonished gaze, he spat out half a bowl of black blood. He regarded his father as a god, but his father wanted to kill him. Just because he was weak, incompetent, and too kind, the man personally cut off his mother's head and gave it to him as a gift on the boy's birthday. But this wasn't enough. He forced the boy to jump off a building and drink poison. Finally, after spitting out 50,000 tons of blood, the boy finally went mad. He changed from an innocent little boy into a black-bellied crown prince, and also a perverted murderer. Every day, he had to kill 999 men, which then became entertainment gossip for him and the maids. Although the maids never responded to him from beginning to end, he tirelessly enjoyed such a life. But with the girl's intrusion, the boy's heart, sealed for many years, finally loosened. He didn't know why. The first time he saw her, he wanted to spoil her and protect her. As long as it was the girl's request, he would satisfy it. Gradually, he also regained his yearning for a normal life. Looking at the dazed little girl in front of him, the boy smiled. He smiled very gently. Then he took the girl back, because he still had a very important thing to do, which was to satisfy this sickly, sweet little foodie. Looking at the assortment of prepared desserts, Eileen drooled for 30,000 miles. But the man snatched the macaron cake away. I heard dogs will die if they eat chocolate. Eileen looked resentful upon hearing this. Then she recklessly pounced on him, acting cute to get close. The man remained unmoved. The same trick won't work forever. This time I need a kiss. Hearing this, before the man could react, Eileen pounced on him, disregarding how much she was drooling. Are you planning to bore a hole in my neck? The girl indicated that these were all dog instincts. The boy gently stroked the girl's head with a face full of happiness. Looking at the pastries close at hand, the girl's eyes lit up. Looking at this cute little creature, the boy seemed to find the happiness of his childhood. He gently stroked the girl's playful face. You asked me just now about happy memories of snowy days, right? My happiest moment is the time you spent with me. Then he gently kissed the girl's lips. That warm touch made the girl blush uncontrollably. Is this what happiness feels like? But just then, the space trembled again. It was replaced by shattered glass and blood-red darkness. Eileen was startled. Then she was firmly protected under the boy's body. The boy looked blankly at everything before him. None of this was created by him. Looking at the flower wreath that had long since disappeared, he doubted his own abilities for the first time. The previous dream worlds, although colorless, had always been led by him, and accidents had never happened. But now, these things seemed out of his control. Eileen said, "They don't want you to wake up. This means we are one step closer to the goal. This world is collapsing. Therefore, we must go deeper." Then Eileen suddenly turned around and told him solemnly, "Your Highness, you must be careful of the existences in this world from now on. The deeper into the memories we go, the harder it is to control. They might kill you to make you stay forever. If you die, you will fall into the dark abyss forever and never be able to wake up again." The man looked indifferent. "Wouldn't it be fine if I just killed them all?" Hearing this, Eileen was frantic. She urged him not to be impulsive. Due to her physical condition, she was about to disappear soon, and the enforcers of the dream could not be killed off. Seeing the man's nonchalant appearance, Eileen anxiously pounced on him, but then she paused. Was this trick no longer working? But watching her body disappear bit by bit, Eileen became more agitated. The boy gently stroked her head, indicating that he would definitely be fine. Then he threw away the sword in his hand and jumped out of the window. At this moment, Eileen suddenly opened her eyes, her body already close to paralysis. This scene terrified Tylee, who hurriedly ran towards the girl. After simple healing, Eileen planned to enter the dream again. But the imperial physician stated that if she continued like this, she might die suddenly. The woman obviously didn't listen. She closed her eyes tightly, vowing to protect everything the two cherished. But before she could catch her breath, a strong killing intent came from behind. A maid stormed in aggressively with a kitchen knife. Eileen was so scared she ran for her life. That's right, this time she turned into a meerkat. Her belly was as big as a fat rat, stuck in a hole and unable to move. Eileen regretted eating so much usually, just when she felt her but was in danger. A large hand pulled her out. Eileen wanted to resist, but discovered that this person was actually the crown prince. She was stunned. Then she twitched and fainted. To save the man in front of her, the girl decided to give up her own life. "If you go on, you will die." But the girl didn't care. She knew she had silently fallen in love with him, and the man didn't disappoint her. He drew his sword, vowing to cut down everything, risking his life to protect this girl. A head of jet black red hair and skin as white as milk. She was so beautiful, like a lively fairy from the celestial realm. In this life, loving her alone is enough. Just now, Eileen entered the crown prince's dream again. But unexpectedly, as soon as she entered, an accident occurred. A Xingtian-like maid carrying a kitchen knife wanted to kill her for soup. Just when Eileen thought she could escape, she was stuck in a 36-inch hole by her 78-inch butt. Before she could react, she was pulled out by a large hand. But then she was scared into fainting. It turned out she was naturally afraid of red things. The man unhurriedly wiped the blood from his face, but his hands were already covered in blood. Eileen immediately lowered her head, crying, not daring to look again. But the splattering blood was like pouring rain, scaring the girl out of her wits. Looking at the little guy on his shoulder, the man smiled. And facing the enforcer lying on the ground, the man was as calm as water, not a ripple of emotion on his face. Eileen, on the other hand, was trembling with fear at his grim, reaper-like aura. She didn't understand why. He was so gentle when facing her, but now he seemed like the Grim Reaper descending to Earth, full of evil and killing intent. Looking at the girl's aggrieved appearance, the man couldn't bear it either. To end all this as quickly as possible, he dragged the tip of his sword across the ground as he walked. The girl was startled by the sudden noise, not understanding why the man would do such a thing. The man simply replied indifferently, "Provocation." This gave the woman a fright. She hurriedly scratched and clawed at the top of his head to express her protest. But the girl didn't know that the reason the boy did this was because he had absolute confidence in his own strength. Actually, he also wanted to tease this timid little fellow. Her shrinking, cowering appearance that made the man unable to put her down. But Eileen, upon learning the truth, just wanted to bite him to death and be done with it, not knowing how long they had walked. The two arrived in front of a large gate. The moment the gate was pushed open, a dazzling beam of white light burst forth from the center. What came into view was clearly the busy consuls, and seated at the head was, naturally, the current emperor. Looking around, she realized there was another person in front. It was the crown prince as a child. He had his head lowered, looking like he had done something wrong. It turned out his childhood playmate had accidentally gone missing. And not knowing how to search, he had come to ask the emperor for help. But the man walked straight past as if he hadn't seen him, as if that wasn't his childhood self, and the person up there wasn't his father. Seeing his reaction, Eileen vaguely guessed something. The man walked up to a bookshelf and tapped it lightly. Immediately, the bookshelf slowly moved aside, revealing a magnificent secret chamber behind it. The man walked in without looking back, as if he had absolutely no interest in this memory. Facing such a resolute father, Eileen also thoroughly understood that His Highness is actually a very gentle person, but he cannot show it because anything he cares about will be crushed by the Emperor. From the Empress to his playmates, he has experienced too much. That must be why he hides his heart so deeply. Just as Eileen wanted to comfort him, the man signaled for the girl to be quiet. A man with an upright posture walked out from the corner. And seeing this scene, Eileen froze completely. But immediately, she was overcome with fear, because that attire represented the Empire's strongest night order. To protect the boy she liked, she disregarded the stinging pain in her body. And chose to face that dark moment together with him. Little did she know, all of this was just the girl's wishful thinking. At 15, his father arranged a beautiful fiancée for him. Although they loved each other very much, they couldn't end up together. Later, his father arranged a cat-girl lady for him. Not only did she have a hot figure, but she was also very good at reading people's expressions. As soon as the boy showed the slightest negative emotion, she would immediately press herself against him. That considerate manner made the man unable to extricate himself. And at this moment, the girl was watching the heartwarming moment between the boy and his first love. She couldn't help but exclaim how beautiful that girl was, like an angel fallen to earth. A head of jet-black, pink hair and skin as dark as milk. Her every move showed she was a lady of noble birth. But the boy couldn't muster the slightest interest in that memory. He unhesitatingly smashed their token of love. It turned out he had long since fallen in love with the girl before him. Not only would she stay by his side when he was lonely and share weal and woe when in danger, but she would also strike various poses when he was sad, just to make the boy forget his troubles and free himself from the darkness. But the boy could tell at a glance that Eileen couldn't dance. The awkward atmosphere instantly petrified her on the spot. The boy knew she just didn't want him to be too sad. He immediately smiled and held her in the palm of his hand. Her cute appearance made the boy unable to let go. However, to survive, she still had to wake the crown prince up. She looked at the man with a face full of anticipation. Even if you leave here, you still have to sleep. That way, I can still enter your dreams anytime, anywhere. By then, our situation will be much better. No need to worry about the enforcers disturbing us. The man was also moved by her words. But immediately he became desolate, because he didn't want to see those people in the real world. The only one he wanted to keep was the girl. Gently stroking the illusionary smoke in his hand, the girl looked in shock at the rapidly changing scene before her. The world suddenly became quiet, and the man disappeared. This made Eileen extremely anxious. She shouted desperately, but received no response. She didn't understand what was happening and searched desperately. Not knowing how far she had walked, a large hand suddenly wrapped around the girl's waist. A huge pulling force plunged her into the boy's embrace. Feeling the man's solid arms, Eileen felt an unprecedented peace of mind. Her body unconsciously slid down a few inches. But the endless darkness still made her heart race wildly. Yet, she suddenly discovered something. She quickly ran over. It turned out these were all the Crown Prince's scattered memory fragments. The more tragic the experience, the more human-shaped the form it took. Looking at the slowly fading green light before her, this must be the scar the Crown Prince wanted to forget the most. Just then, a slender hand slowly raised up. Eileen looked at him in surprise. The man silently pulled her into his arms, his fingers gently touching the fading screen of light. Because you are here, I am no longer alone. But the next scene made Eileen's jaw drop in shock. How could there be such an exquisite woman? The boy had two stunningly beautiful fiancées. The older wife was charming and moving, but the younger wife was lively and cute. But he loved neither of them. Instead, he chose the ugly elf girl. It turned out that from the very beginning, both of them were using him, just because he was the Empire's only prince. Controlling him was equivalent to possessing the entire empire. And all of this was a conspiracy by his mother and uncle, all to overthrow the tyrannical emperor's rule. Looking at the memory fragments before her, Eileen was incredibly shocked. I can no longer tolerate that dog of an emperor. Why don't I find a chance to kill him directly? The woman warned him, do not act too hastily. That will only be counterproductive. The Horn family they had cultivated had already been uprooted by the emperor. Therefore, she hoped the plan would continue after the girl became the crown princess. If they took one wrong step, they and their entire family would face destruction. The amount of information in this memory was simply too great. Even Eileen couldn't accept it for a moment. It turned out the crown prince, from beginning to end, that was just a tool for them to realize their ambitions. The little girl's obedience and sensibility. The cat girl's charming clinginess, even his mother's care and his uncle's guidance, were all results of their meticulous planning. And the emperor wasn't paranoid. What he worried about was happening all the time. The only one kept in the dark was the young crown prince. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but tremble. But just then, the girl stumbled and fell to the ground. Her body had reached its limit. Her vision became blurred, and her hearing gradually faded. But the crown prince's words, "Don't go," deeply pierced her heart. She also wanted to stay by his side, to accompany him through this difficult time. But she couldn't do it. Her gradually disappearing body gave her no room for maneuver. Seeing the man's desolate appearance, Eileen's heart ached terribly, but she was powerless. Immediately, she turned into a wisp of white smoke and slowly dissipated. But when she opened her eyes, she found an elephant sitting on her body. She struggled desperately, but to no avail. Just then, a man walked towards her. Eileen was overjoyed when she saw him. The person coming was the crown prince dressed as a magician, but he showed no intention of helping. Instead, he stared at the elephant in front of him with great interest. He even had the idea of sitting on the elephant's back. This made Eileen furious. Even if she had turned into a human, the contrast shouldn't be this big, right? Then she heard the mocking laughter of the elephant and the crown prince. Eileen sat up from the bed in anger, looking ready to strike. But upon waking, she realized it was all a dream. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness washed over her. She collapsed onto the bed with a thud. Tears flickered in her eyes. Hearing the noise, the knight rushed in and quickly helped her up. He said those two were too noisy, so he had put them in the room next door. He would call them over immediately. Eileen said it was fine. She felt much better after sleeping. But suddenly she realized something. How long did I sleep? It wasn't a whole day, was it? The knight told her she had slept for 5 whole days. Eileen was shocked to hear this. Not only had she left the crown prince alone in that place, but she had also slept soundly. She immediately wanted to go find him. But the next second, the knight stuffed a large mouthful of food into her mouth. Although you fully realize the urgency of time, replenishing energy is also essential. Besides, your stomach growling echoed through the whole room. If His Majesty came, he would think we weren't taking good care of you. Eileen, however, said the crown prince might be crying alone. The knight rubbed his chin. The crown prince is a gentle and strong person, not as fragile as you say. Thinking of the man killing without blinking an eye, Eileen was completely stunned. Did he have anything to do with being gentle? Does this guy, who cares nothing about worldly affairs, really know the crown prince? If it's really as dangerous as you say, you should conserve your strength even more. With that, he turned and left without looking back. Eileen was still hesitating when the door suddenly opened again. Tylee threw himself at her, crying. That worried look made Eileen feel a long-lost warmth. But then she was pushed away by the scatterbrained Tylee. "Have you eaten?" Seeing there were no desserts, he immediately shouted, "Miss Eileen can't get full on this little bit of food." Hearing this, Eileen's face darkened. After resting well, she climbed onto the crown prince's bed again. To speed up the process, she threw herself directly into the man's arms, accompanied by a flash of golden light. Eileen only felt her body become heavy, but before she could react, that a heart-palpitating tiger roar came from beside her ear. The Yander crown prince fell in love with the clumsy little girl. Whenever he gets angry, he turns into a clingy little tiger, acting spoiled and cute all in one go. Just now, Eileen entered the crown prince's dream again, watching the two gradually becoming insane. Eileen knew they were already controlled by desire, planning to turn Mel into a puppet while he was still young. My patience has reached its limit. If we just wait for an opportunity, we will end up destroyed like the Horn family. How long are you going to pretend to be noble, sister? Watching the gradually fading image, Eileen was furious to the extreme. Did the crown prince not deserve to be cherished in their eyes? Just because of fear of imperial power, they started plotting against the crown prince from the moment he was born. They didn't even hesitate to start a war to shake the emperor's authority, causing tens of millions of families to be broken and destroyed. The man, however, appeared calm and composed about this. His overly calm demeanor made the girl worry even more. "Your Highness, are you all right?" The man slowly opened his eyes, then suddenly hugged the woman's neck. "I've seen it hundreds of times. I've long since lost feeling for it." But the girl could clearly feel the man's sadness. She knew he was just pretending to be strong. His heart was probably already riddled with holes. Immediately, she stood up abruptly and let out a heart-palpitating tiger roar at the sky. Then, under the man's surprised gaze, she picked him up in her mouth, spun him 360 degrees, and threw him onto her back. The intense dizziness made the man pass out. Eileen ignored this and started running wildly, vowing to take the man away from this painful memory. But after running for 98.7 seconds, she stopped in defeat. Although she had turned into a tiger, her stamina was still that of the gluttonous little waste. Intense exhaustion made her collapse to the ground. The man also spoke up inopportunely at this moment. "You know you've been running in circles in the same place, right?" Eileen's eyes darted around awkwardly. "Sure enough, we still have to resolve the remaining memories first. But how do we do that?" At this moment, Eileen shot him a sharp look. The intense exhaustion was getting to her head. She impatiently wanted to lay her cards on the table with the Crown Prince and tell him everything she knew. But she was ruthlessly rejected by the Crown Prince. That Sundara look left Eileen with no options. Desperate, she lay on the ground, throwing a tantrum. "Do you still not trust me even now?" Hearing this, a flash of disappointment crossed the man's eyes. Such a question was, for him, also a form of doubt. But seeing the girl's tearful appearance, he was amused by this cute fellow again. He immediately pinned the girl beneath him. The suddenly closed face that made the girl's cheeks flush red. What did he want to do? But the next second, she kicked the man away. The man lay helplessly on the ground. The girl, however, was trembling with fear. Realizing what she had done, she looked like a child who had done something wrong. The man rubbed his head. "If I praise you for being cute again, I'll probably really die. Please take care of my frail body." The girl was stunned hearing this, then looked at him with disdain. A man who could hack a dragon to death with his bare hands, no matter how you looked at it, had absolutely nothing to do with being frail. But their biggest problem now was that they couldn't leave the dream. Looking at the memory fragments before them, the two fell into silence. Finally, the man seemed to think of something. "Can't we just make the memory crystal ball disappear?" Eileen was shocked to hear this, saying he absolutely must not do anything foolish. Breaking the memory crystal ball was no different from smashing his head. The man was shocked by her eager logic. "Can't we use new memories to overwrite the original ones?" Hearing the man's explanation, Eileen suddenly understood. Then she opened her bloody maw and put her head inside the tiger's mouth. A memory like this should be profound enough, right? The man didn't answer. Instead, he stared at her with a look reserved for idiots. Eileen felt a bit ashamed under his direct stare and lowered her head awkwardly. The man ignored her and instead stared at the memory fragments in a daze, seeming to be thinking about something. He turned to look at Eileen. "Every time you appear or disappear, the sky and time always change. Does this mean you can control time or space?" Eileen said it wasn't that exaggerated. She could only control it for the instant she entered or exited, and it was limited to the sky. "Then if your domain is the sky, does that mean the ground is my domain?" Eileen looked at him curiously upon hearing this. "Although you say that, I have no way to be sure either." But then Eileen thought of something. "Your Highness, do you trust me?" Hearing this, the man stubbornly turned his head away. Looking at the man's behavior, Eileen felt a bit helpless too, but she immediately let it go. "If you don't trust me, we can't call upon the guardian spirits to break through the dream." Although the man couldn't figure out what guardian spirits were, he still put his hand behind his back and acted serious. "All right, I trust you." Eileen was shocked for 3 anniversaries by his casual manner. Trust isn't something you can just say casually. But to her surprise, the next moment, countless guardian spirits really appeared, surrounding the two of them. The crown prince worth hundreds of billions, that doesn't love his kingdom, but loves a clumsy elf girl. She's also a Yandra little glutton. He wants to eat her up until not even crumbs are left. He thought that with his peerless beauty, he could easily handle her. But unexpectedly, the girl wasn't interested in him. This made his heart unable to bear it at all. But immediately, he was attracted by the peach blossoms filling the sky. "The place the guardian spirits guide us to is indeed beautiful." This sentence, however, felt like a knife stabbing into the girl's chest. She thought the man didn't trust her that much, and only said words of trust because he was curious about the guardian spirits. From her expression, the man obviously guessed something. He slowly approached the girl, putting on a deeply affectionate look. He knew the terrifying nature of a woman's heart well. Give her a guess, and she can outline an entire melodramatic plot. At such a close distance, the girl truly felt the man's handsomeness. Exquisite features, fair skin, not a single flaw to be found. While her heart raced wildly, her face also uncooperatively showed a love-struck expression. But no matter how they looked at it, they were still in the dream. The girl stated, without finding the key to enter the depths of the heart, it is absolutely impossible to leave the dream. But thinking of this, she felt a bit speechless. Because of the guardian spirit's intervention, now they could only start over. But at this moment, the man's memories had been largely obscured. Trying to enter the depths of his heart was 100 times harder than before. The man didn't know what to do for a moment, so he asked the girl if there was any other way. The key to entering the depths of the heart is, for one of the owner's emotions to reach an extreme. Hearing this, the man narrowed his eyes at the girl. I trust you so much. Why hasn't the dreamscape unlocked? The girl, however, looked disdainful. She believed the man only chose to trust her because of her animal form. It wasn't trust from the bottom of his heart at all. She angrily slapped the peach tree, forgetting her tiger body. The falling petals instantly buried her 3.5 feet deep. She shook her head and spat out a mouthful of peach blossoms. The man was amused by her silly appearance. He didn't know when it started, but his eyes had slowly grown accustomed to her company. He gently stroked the girl's head. This girl really made him unable to extricate himself. If breaking through the dream requires my extreme emotion. But from the beginning, I felt a bit unsatisfied. The title, Your Highness, is really too constraining. You should call me Master from now on. The girl was stunned when she heard this. She really wanted to slap him to death right now. She looked at the man with disdain, but still called it out. But immediately after, she was so disgusted she puked up a whole rainbow. The man, however, looked at her gently. You are really cute. I seem to have developed feelings for you. Eileen was startled. This guy is pushing his luck again, saying strange things. Looking at the man's satisfied face, she sighed helplessly. The feelings in your mouth are only for the animal I've transformed into. No matter what animal I turn into, you like it, right? A philandering big cabbage won't have extreme emotions. You must like me myself. But as soon as she finished speaking, she felt something was wrong. Immediately, her limbs went stiff and she started babbling. I mean, you like all animals very much. This kind of emotion is too broad. Emotion should be directed at a single and independent individual. But I have developed feelings for you. The arrogant and wealthy crown prince turned out to be a love-brained fool in secret. In order to get the elf girl who was 3 years older than him, he feigned weakness and innocence, even kneeling down to be her little puppy. But the girl's sentence, "You are not my type," deeply pierced his heart. Just now, the crown prince finally confessed. He domineeringly pinned the girl beneath him. I seem to have developed special feelings for you. The girl stared at him blankly. Such tenderness like water was simply two different people compared to the perverted killer from before. You are really cute. I can't bear to let go. Hearing this, Eileen cracked. It turned out it was still because of her animal appearance. She stood up excitedly. To like someone, you need to like that person themselves. But as soon as she finished, Eileen felt something was wrong. Is this him confessing or me confessing? But then she thought of something. Ours should be considered friendship between friends, right? The man, however, didn't care. He had already sketched out a whole melodramatic plot in his head. You actually wanted to fall in love with you? How abrupt. Eileen was deeply shocked by his behavior of reversing the roles. Clearly, he was the one who said he liked her. So why did it seem like she was the one chasing him now? The man gently plucked a petal. As long as they are animals, I can fall in love with them immediately, because they are forever under my control. As long as I give enough love, they will open their hearts to me. However, to Eileen's ears, this was simply about keeping animals in captivity. But he didn't keep any animals in reality. This made Eileen very curious. The man smiled at her. Because the only one I want to keep is you. Eileen was startled by his words. She didn't want to become a canary in a cage. She tentatively asked the man, then how should feelings for humans be treated? He pondered for a moment and spoke slowly. To love someone is to give everything for her, including life. Eileen didn't expect him to be such a hopeless romantic, but he was only 19. If you aren't prepared to give everything for love, then simply don't start. Do you hate me? The girl was slightly stunned by his sudden change of subject. How could I? But speaking of which, why do you keep pressing me? Leaving aside like or dislike, from the beginning, you were my type. Hearing this, the man was shocked and somewhat disappointed. It felt like his heart had lost something. The girl felt a bit embarrassed under his gaze, afraid he would go berserk and fall into darkness again. The man strode forward and cupped the girl's face in his hands. What did you say? Say it again. Seeing this face up close again, she couldn't help but blush completely. But she still said that sentence again. Thump, thump. At this moment, Eileen's heart couldn't stop beating wildly. This wasn't making one's heart flutter. It was simply naked violence. Every time, he used that handsome face to tempt her. But immediately, dense clusters of manjusaka flowers emerged beneath her feet. The girl was stunned by this scene. Just saying she didn't like him meant he was going to drag her into darkness with him. But in the next second, the manjusaka flowers that had just appeared suddenly withered. Looking up, she found the man looking at her gently. It turned out this guy was teasing her again. But then she realized something. This peach tree was actually created by His Highness. Because it was too close to nature, she hadn't discovered it immediately. But she didn't know what the language of peach blossoms was. Why had the atmosphere become so warm? How about her nickname be Song from now on? Hearing this, Eileen looked at him with disdain. No matter how you hear it, it sounds like a dog's name. Then let's call you Golden Light. Eileen didn't understand the difference. Because your real name is a dream woven of golden light. The abbreviation would be Golden Light. Although her heart fluttered a little, the girl still ruthlessly rejected him. You should still call me Eileen. Hearing this, the man became a bit arrogant again. Then you call my name first. Eileen was speechless at his childish behavior. She wanted to muddle through, but suffered the man's death stare. Calling the other person's name in this situation made her feel very shy. However, she immediately clenched her hands, gritted her teeth, and softly called out his name. Hearing this, the man finally revealed a satisfied smile. Well done, Song. The crown prince worth hundreds of billions. Didn't love his empire, didn't even love his father. He just had to fall in love with a dorky elf girl. She was also a sickly little glutton. He wanted to devour her completely until not even crumbs remained. Just now, in order to truly be with the girl, the man decided to assist her in leaving the dream. But with the intervention of the guardian spirits, the memories deep in his heart had been mostly erased. All he could think of now was the girl's cute face and the happy times they spent together these past days. Just being together made him feel a warmth he had never felt before. But his sentence, "Hurry up and fall in love with me," made the girl's heart race and left her a loss. In order not to show her love-struck side, she pretended to think and quickly fled. Watching her retreating figure, the man smiled unconsciously. Although he meant to tease her a bit, her bewildered look was truly intoxicating. He casually grabbed a petal, fantasizing about their days after leaving. She should be very cute in reality too, right? But just then, Eileen appeared in front of him again, looking naive. "Your Highness, do you still have attachments to the past?" The man looked at her helplessly. She clearly said she would figure out a way herself, but in the end, she still couldn't avoid the past. However, even though Eileen put on a well-behaved and cute appearance, the man still unhesitatingly rejected her question. But she hadn't planned to get the answer from the man in one go. Because in previous cases, wanting to enter the client's heart required all sorts of guidance from her. She gently placed her hand on the man's chest, putting on a gentle face. "Your emotions are the key to opening the dream. Knowing your past will be a great help for us to leave here. Besides, there are only the two of us here. I will quietly be a qualified listener." Hearing this, the man was silent for a long while. His lips moved slightly. Seeing this, Eileen was overjoyed. Was he finally going to reveal his heart to her? But in the next second, before she could react, she was kicked out once again. It turned out that, unknown to anyone when it started, the man had developed severe paranoia. He often couldn't distinguish between reality and dreams. Everything familiar before his eyes emitted a strange aura. He didn't know if the world had changed, or if he had fallen into a hazy illusion. The only thing he knew was that the world he tried his best to touch could no longer be reached. He clenched his fists in despair time and again, and slowly released them in helplessness. Over time, he gradually lost his judgment, not knowing if he was actually still alive. He could no longer see human faces clearly. Even the maids around him looked like they were stained with ink. No matter how hard he focused, there was not a shred of improvement. Instead, the disappearing parts expanded further, until he couldn't see anything clearly at all. He could only distinguish them by their voices and clothes. He never expected that a person could go mad in silence. Now he was like a gear, gradually losing himself in rebellion and submission. Wanted to find proof of being alive, but powerless to do so, he could only gradually go crazy as time passed. Eventually, the Emperor turned into a headless dragon, roaring crazily in his ears. There was no one around him, yet the room was filled with thousands of words. He fell asleep time and again in nothingness, and woke up time and again in fear. Finally, he fantasized that he was a perverted killer, but finding no target to vent on brought him close to a breakdown. He only hoped that he had never existed and to die in his sleep just like that. But when he woke up again, he was back under that peach tree. He slowly sat up. His mind was full of the girl's figure. Because of her accidental intrusion, his originally dim world regained its radiance. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile slightly. That guy really makes one miss her. But suddenly, the girl's voice came from behind. Looking back, it was that dorky, silly fox. That cute appearance excited the man endlessly. He picked her up and gently pressed his face against hers. "I will protect you for a lifetime, so don't leave me, okay?" But before he finished speaking, the fox turned into golden light and dissipated in the air. Looking at his empty embrace, the man felt an indescribable loss in his heart. He was really afraid this was their last meeting. He was even more afraid the girl would hate him because of his recklessness. But the next scene stunned him. He saw a small deer appear, trembling in front of him. Immediately, the girl's angry voice came. "Your Highness," I said, "if you kick me out of the dream, I will be in great pain." To protect the girl he loved, the man decided not to sleep anymore. To return to that world that had long gone bad. It turned out that from the beginning, he suffered from severe schizophrenia. In his world, his father turned into a headless dragon roaring crazily, and the maids looked like their faces were covered in ink. So whenever the past was discussed, he would unconsciously switch to his second personality, tyrannical. And the only one who could heal him was the girl in front of him. But this girl would soon be executed by his father because of him. He would absolutely not allow such a thing to happen. Being with her was the only joy of his life. Therefore, he decided to play a shocking game of chess. From the gods and demons above to the common people below, all were part of his chess game. Just now, Eileen, who had been kicked out of the dream, came to the man in a rage. "Your Highness," I said, "if I am kicked out by the owner's subjective will, whether in reality or in a dream, I will be in great pain." Looking at the girl's weak appearance, the man's heart ached endlessly. He gently picked the girl up, promising that nothing like this would ever happen again, because he had already let go of the past and was no longer afraid of the lonely darkness. As long as the girl could stay by his side, he would have no regrets, even if he hid in the darkness forever. He sincerely apologized to the girl. The girl also said earnestly that there absolutely could not be a next time, because the deadline given by the Emperor was almost up. At that time, not only her, but even the remaining Dissentia people would face a catastrophe. Actually, the man knew clearly in his heart that his slumber wasn't due to any curse, but due to despair towards life. Living for 20 years in a world where he couldn't see human faces caused him pain every moment. The man held the girl tightly in his arms, stating he would never let that happen. Actually, the girl also knew the destruction of Dissentia was nothing more than an excuse for the Emperor to appease the people. He didn't want people to associate this with a retribution for his usurpation of power. That would only shake his authority. But as long as the man woke up, all this could be easily solved. But even then, he couldn't guarantee the girl's life. The Emperor would absolutely not allow a person who knew his secret to live in this world. There was a high probability he would silence everyone who knew about this. After all, killing a few commoners wouldn't cause the slightest ripple in his heart. But the man couldn't accept that. The girl was the only light of his life in this world. Even if he had to break with the Emperor for this, he wouldn't hesitate. But that wouldn't change the situation of the Dissentia people. So he smiled at the girl. "Attribute my slumber to a curse of Dissentia." At first, the girl didn't react, thinking she had heard wrong. Immediately, she looked at the man in surprise. Was this the rhythm of dragging everyone to die together? Actually, the man wanted to use the oracle to declare to the public that only a Dissentia person who inherited the craftsman's ability could break the curse. And the only thing the girl had to do was wake him up. This way, everyone would be convinced by this answer. At that time, in order to round out his previous lies, the emperor wouldn't easily kill the survivors of the Descentia tribe anymore. Hearing this, the girl also realized, indeed, there was no better outcome than this. Looking at the girl's cute appearance, the man slowly stood up. For you, I'm willing to do anything. Looking at the man's gentle appearance, Eileen was completely captivated. She decided right then that no matter what tragic past the man told next, she would comfort him well. But unexpectedly, the man had no intention of revealing his past. Instead, he gently stroked her jet black hair. Then, under the girl's incredulous gaze, he slowly kissed her fair forehead. I think I've fallen in love with you, Song. The scheming crown prince fell in love with the cowardly crybaby. She was also a sickly little glutton. He wanted to devour her completely until not even crumbs remained. Little did he know, he became the one being teased. Looking at the girl who was scared silly, the man tucked her into his arms, completely disregarding the girl's resistance. But facing the pursuit of the strongest knight, the man intended to take the initiative to attack. He quickly arrived at a corner, drawing the long sword at his waist, observing the opponent's movements at all times. Then, taking advantage of the knight being off guard, the man suddenly launched an attack, slashing down heavily with his sword. Accompanied by the sound of metal clashing, the man gradually gained the upper hand. But as the knight exerted force, the little advantage he had gained earlier vanished instantly. The man was knocked flying by a sword strike, slamming heavily against the wall. Eileen was stunned by this scene. The dignified crown prince of a country was going to be killed by a knight. In an empire where imperial power was supreme, this was a grave crime punishable by the execution of 9 generations. But little did she know, all this was within the man's calculations. He stared fixedly at the knight's every move. Finally, the moment he swung his sword, he ripped the badge off the knight's chest and then disappeared at the end of the corridor. Eileen, surviving the disaster, was moved to tears. She desperately rubbed the ground. It felt so good to be alive. Turning her head, she saw the crown prince's incredibly confident smile. He didn't care about his injuries at all. But this made Eileen extremely anxious. Your life is my life. By the way, can you consider the feelings of us commoners? If you die, then my tribe and I are completely finished. The man didn't expect his life to involve so many people, and his eyes dodged in embarrassment. But he still stubbornly stated that in his own paradise, the opponent couldn't hurt him at all. As the plot advanced, the things he could control became fewer and fewer. Even automatic healing became unusually slow. However, the man didn't care. He simply snapped his fingers lightly. The originally magnificent palace turned into a gorgeous bedroom in the blink of an eye. The scene deeply shocked the girl. Comparisons really are maddening. Looking at the extremely luxurious chandelier and the floor made of pure gold, it was hard to imagine the value of these items. But immediately, she was grabbed by a large hand and lay together with the crown prince on the soft golden silk. She slowly held up the man's hand. You fought that knight for the badge, didn't you? The man picked up the pink badge and nodded, because that was his uncle's exclusive accessory. At the mention of his uncle, the man became melancholy. At this moment, Eileen also suddenly thought of something. The emperor had once given her a scroll regarding the crown prince. It clearly recorded that the crown prince could read at 1, practice swordsmanship at 3, mastered the 4 arts and 8 elegances at 5, and was well versed in the theories of kingship. Therefore, he had always been regarded by the emperor as his successor. Eileen couldn't help but sigh. This wasn't a record scroll. It was practically a biography of a legend. But the further she read, the darker Eileen's expression became. A complex mix of emotions surged in her heart, because all of this was the emperor's conspiracy. To cultivate a perfect emperor, the emperor exposed him to the full range of human emotions from a very young age. So much so that at 15, he arranged a beautiful wife for him. But just when the two thought they would live happily ever after, the girl unexpectedly disappeared. Along with her went the crown prince's childhood playmate. Subsequently, right in front of the crown prince, the emperor, that executed his mother and the uncle who treated him as his own son. From then on, he lost the heart of a ruler. He didn't want to become a cold-blooded, ruthless person. And his only goal in this life was to kill the dog emperor and then live in seclusion in the mountains. But now, he didn't think that way anymore, because he had one more goal. That was to protect the girl before him, to not let her suffer the slightest harm, to protect the boy she liked. That she disregarded the stinging pain in her body, choosing to face that dark moment with him. Little did she know that all this was the girl's wishful thinking. At 15, he had been arranged a beautiful wife by his father. Although they loved each other very much, they couldn't be together. Later, his father arranged a cat-girl lady for him. Not only did she have a hot figure, but she was also very good at reading people. As long as the boy showed the slightest negative emotion, that she would immediately press her chest against him. That intimate behavior made it impossible for the man to resist. And at this moment, the girl was watching the warm moment between the boy and his first love. She couldn't help but sigh at how beautiful the girl was, like an angel fallen into the mortal world. A head of dark pink hair and skin as white as milk. Her gestures showed she was a lady of a noble family. But the boy had not the slightest interest in that memory. He didn't hesitate to throw away their token of love. It turned out he had long since fallen in love with the girl in front of him. Not only would she stay by his side when he was lonely, and share weal and woe in times of danger, but she would also strike various poses when he was sad, just to make the boy forget his troubles and free him from the darkness. But the boy saw at a glance that Eileen couldn't dance. The awkward atmosphere instantly petrified her on the spot. The boy knew she just didn't want him to be too sad. He immediately smiled and held her in the palm of his hand. Her cute appearance made the boy unable to let go. However, in order to survive, she still had to wake the crown prince. She looked at the man with expectation. Even if you leave here, you still have to sleep. That way, I can still enter your dreams anytime, anywhere. By then, our situation will be much better, and we won't have to worry about the enforcers disturbing us. The man was moved by her words, but immediately became despondent, because he didn't want to see those people in the real world. The only one he wanted to keep was the girl, caressing the phantom smoke in his hand. The girl looked in shock at the rapidly changing scene before her. The world suddenly became quiet, and the man disappeared. This made Eileen extremely anxious. She shouted desperately, but got no response. She didn't understand what was happening. She searched desperately, not knowing how far she had walked. A large hand suddenly wrapped around the girl's waist. The immense force pulled her into the boy's arms. Feeling the man's solid arms, Eileen felt an unprecedented sense of peace. Her body unconsciously relaxed a bit, but the endless darkness still made her heart race. But then she suddenly noticed something and quickly ran over. It turned out these were all memory fragments scattered by the crown prince. The more miserable the experience, the closer the manifested shape resembled a human form. Looking at the slowly disappearing green light before her, she realized this must be the scar the crown prince wanted to forget the most. Just then, a slender hand slowly raised. Eileen looked at him in surprise. The man silently held her in his arms, his fingers gently touching the disappearing light curtain. Because with you here, I am no longer alone. But the next scene made Eileen's jaw drop in surprise. How could there be such an exquisite woman? The boy had two stunningly beautiful fiancées. The older wife was charming and alluring, while the younger one was lively and cute. But he didn't love either of them. Instead, he chose the ugly elf girl. It turned out that from the very beginning, the two were using him. Just because he was the only prince of the empire. Controlling him was equivalent to possessing the entire empire. And all of this was a conspiracy by his mother and uncle in order to overthrow the rule of the brutal emperor. Looking at the memory fragments before her, Eileen was shocked. I have tolerated that dog emperor to the limit. Why don't I find a chance to kill him directly? The woman warned him not to be too hasty, as that would only be counterproductive. The Horn family they had cultivated had already been uprooted by the emperor. Therefore, she hoped that the plan would continue after the girl became the crown princess. One wrong step, and they, along with the entire family, would face destruction. The amount of information in this memory was too overwhelming. Even Eileen couldn't accept it for a moment. It turned out that the crown prince, from beginning to end, was merely a tool for them to realize their ambitions. The little girl's obedience and sensibility, the cat girl's charm and clinginess. Even his mother's care and his uncle's guidance were the results of their careful planning. And the emperor didn't have paranoia. What he worried about was happening all the time. And the only one kept in the dark was the young crown prince. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but tremble. But just then, the girl fell to the ground. Her body had reached its limit. Her vision blurred, and her hearing gradually faded. But the crown prince's plea, "Don't go," deeply stung her heart. She also wanted to stay by his side, to accompany him through this difficult moment. But she couldn't. Her gradually disappearing body left her no room for choice. Looking at the man's lonely figure, Eileen felt incredible heartache but was powerless. She immediately turned into a wisp of smoke and slowly dissipated. But when she opened her eyes, she found an elephant sitting on her body. She struggled desperately, but to no avail. Just then, a man walked towards her. Eileen was overjoyed when she saw him. It was the Crown Prince, dressed as a magician. But he showed no intention of helping. Instead, he stared at the elephant with interest, even contemplating sitting on its back. This infuriated Eileen. Even if he had changed, surely the contrast shouldn't be this stark. Then, she heard the mocking laughter of the elephant and the Crown Prince. Eileen sat up in bed angrily, looking ready to strike. But then she realized it had all been a dream. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness washed over her. She flopped back onto the bed, tears glistening in her eyes. Hearing the noise, the knight rushed in and helped her up. He explained that those two were too noisy and had been moved next door, but he would call them over immediately. Eileen said it didn't matter. She felt much better after sleeping. But suddenly, she realized something. How long did I sleep? Not a whole day, right? The knight told her she had slept for 5 full days. Eileen was shocked. Not only had she left the Crown Prince alone in that place, but she had also slept soundly. She immediately wanted to go find him, but the next second, her mouth was stuffed with a large bite of food by the knight. Although you fully realize the urgency, replenishing your energy is essential. Besides, your stomach is rumbling so loudly it echoes through the room. If His Majesty comes, he'll think we aren't taking good care of you. Eileen said the Crown Prince might be crying alone. The knight rubbed his chin. The Crown Prince is a gentle and strong person, not as fragile as you say. Thinking of the man who killed without blinking an eye, Eileen was stunned. Did he have anything to do with gentle? For someone who cares so little about worldly affairs, do you really understand the Crown Prince? If it's truly as dangerous as you say, you should recharge your energy. Then he turned and left without looking back. Eileen was still hesitating. Just then, the door opened again, and Tylee rushed in, crying. That worried look gave Eileen a long-lost sense of warmth. But immediately, she was pushed away by the scatterbrained Tylee. Did you eat? Seeing there was no dessert, he immediately shouted, Miss Eileen can't get full eating, just this. Hearing this, Eileen looked exasperated. After resting, she climbed onto the Crown Prince's bed again. To speed up the progress, she threw herself directly into the man's arms. Accompanied by a flash of golden light, Eileen felt her body sink. But before she could react, a heart-palpitating tiger roar sounded in her ear. The sickly Crown Prince fell in love with a dorky little girl. Once angry, he turned into a clingy little tiger, acting spoiled and being cute all at once. Just moments ago, Eileen had entered the Crown Prince's dream again. Looking at the two gradually going mad, Eileen knew they were being controlled by desire, intending to turn Mel into a puppet while he was still young. My patience has reached its limit. If we just wait for an opportunity, we will face destruction like the Horn family. How long are you going to pretend to be noble, sister? Looking at the fading image, Eileen was furious. Was the Crown Prince not worth cherishing in their eyes? Just because of their fear of imperial power, they had been plotting since the Crown Prince's birth. They didn't even hesitate to start a war to shake the Emperor's authority, causing tens of millions of families to be broken and destroyed. The man, however, appeared calm about this. His overly calm demeanor made the girl worry even more. Your Highness, are you okay? The man slowly opened his eyes. He immediately hugged the girl's neck. I have seen it hundreds of times. I feel nothing anymore. But the girl could clearly feel the man's sadness and knew he was just pretending to be strong. His heart was likely riddled with holes. Suddenly, she stood up. She let out a heart-palpitating tiger roar at the sky. Then, under the man's surprised gaze, she picked him up in her mouth. With a 360-degree spin, she threw him onto her back. The intense dizziness made the man faint. Eileen didn't care. She started running wildly, vowing to take the man away from these sad memories. But after running for 87 seconds, she stopped defeated. Although she had turned into a tiger, her stamina was still that of the little foodie waste she used to be. Intense fatigue left her limp on the ground. The man also spoke up inappropriately at this moment. You know you've just been running in circles in the same spot, right? Eileen averted her eyes awkwardly. Sure enough, do we still have to solve the residual memories first? But how? At this, Eileen shot him a sharp look. The intense fatigue had made her a bit irrational. Impatiently, she wanted to lay her cards on the table and tell the Crown Prince everything she knew. But she was ruthlessly rejected by the Crown Prince. His arrogant demeanor left Eileen helpless. Desperate, she lay on the ground, throwing a tantrum. Do you still not believe me? Hearing this, a flicker of disappointment flashed in the man's eyes. Such a question was, for him, a form of doubt. But seeing the girl crying, he was amused by this cute creature again. He immediately pinned the girl underneath him. The suddenly closed face made the girl's cheeks flush red. What did one do? But the next second, she kicked the man away. The man lay on the ground, bewildered. The girl was shivering with fright. Realizing what she had done, she looked like a child who had made a mistake. The man rubbed his head. If I praise you for being cute again, I'll probably actually die. Please, have some consideration for my frail body. The girl was stunned. She immediately looked at him with disdain. A man who could hack a giant dragon to death with his bare hands. How could he have anything to do with frail? But their biggest problem now was that they couldn't leave the dream. Looking at the memory fragments before them, the two fell into silence. Finally, the man seemed to think of something. Can't we just make the memory crystal ball disappear directly? Eileen was shocked and told him he must not do anything stupid. Breaking the memory crystal ball was no different from smashing his head. He was shocked by her black and white logic. Can't we use new memories to overwrite the original ones? Hearing the man's explanation, Eileen suddenly understood. Then she opened her bloody maw and placed his head inside the tiger's mouth. Such a memory should be deep enough, right? The man didn't answer. Instead, he stared at her as if looking at an idiot. Eileen felt a bit ashamed under his direct gaze and lowered her head awkwardly. The man ignored her, staring instead at the memory fragments in a daze, seemingly deep in thought. He turned to look at Eileen. Every time you appear or disappear, the sky and time always change. Does this mean you can control time or space? Eileen said it wasn't that exaggerated. She could only control it at the moment of entering or exiting, and it was limited to the sky. Then if your domain is the sky, does that mean the ground is my domain? Eileen looked at him curiously. Although you say that, I can't be sure. But then Eileen thought of something. Your Highness, do you believe me? Hearing this, the man turned his head away stubbornly. Looking at the man's reaction, Eileen felt a bit helpless, but then she let it go. If you don't believe me, we can't rely on calling the guardian spirits to break through the dream. Although the man didn't understand what a guardian spirit was, he still clasped his hands behind his back and acted serious. I believe you. Eileen was shocked by his hasty response. Trust wasn't something that could just be spoken so casually. But contrary to her expectations, the next moment, countless guardian spirits actually appeared and surrounded the two. The Crown Prince, worth hundreds of billions, didn't care for his kingdom. He preferred to fall in love with the dorky elf girl, who was also a sickly little foodie. He wanted to devour her completely, leaving nothing behind. He thought that with his peerless looks, he could easily handle her. But he didn't expect the girl to be uninterested in him. His heart couldn't bear it. But immediately, he was attracted by the peach blossoms filling the sky. The place guided by the guardian spirits is indeed beautiful. This sentence felt like a knife plunging into the girl's chest. She thought the man didn't trust her that much, that he only said he trusted her because he was curious about the guardian spirits. From her expression, the man obviously guessed something. He slowly approached the girl, showing a look of deep affection. He knew the terrifying nature of a woman's heart. Give her a suspicion, and she could outline an entire melodramatic plot. At such a close distance, the girl truly felt the man's handsomeness. Exquisite features, fair skin, she couldn't find a single flaw. While her heart beat wildly, her face also traitorously flushed with infatuation. But no matter how they looked at it, they were still in the dream. The girl said that without finding the key to the depths of the heart, it was impossible to leave the dream. But thinking of this, she was a bit speechless. Due to the intervention of the guardian spirits, they now had to start over. But at this moment, the man's memory had been obscured by more than half. Entering the depths of the heart was now 100 times harder than before. The man didn't know what to do for a moment, so he asked the girl if there were any other ways. The key to entering the depths of the heart is for a certain emotion of the owner to reach the extreme. Hearing this, the man narrowed his eyes at the girl. I obviously trust you so much. Why hasn't the dream unlocked? The girl, however, looked disdainful. She believed the man only chose to trust her because of her animal form, and that it wasn't trust from the heart at all. Angrily, she slapped the peach tree, forgetting she was currently in a tiger's body. Falling petals instantly buried her 3.5 feet deep. She shook her head, spitting out a mouthful of peach blossoms. The man was amused by her silly appearance. Without realizing when it started, he had slowly grown accustomed to the days with her company. He gently patted the girl's head. This girl really made it hard for him to extricate himself. If breaking through the dream requires my extreme emotions, well, I felt unsatisfied from the start. The title, Your Highness, is really too restrictive. From now on, just call me Master. The girl was stunned upon hearing this. She really wanted to slap him to death right now. She looked at the man with disdain, but still called it out. But immediately after, she was so disgusted she puked a whole rainbow. The man, however, looked at her tenderly. You really are cute. I think I've developed feelings for you. Eileen was startled. This guy was pushing his luck again, saying weird things. Looking at the man's satisfied face, she sighed helplessly. The feelings in your mouth are only for the animal forms I transform into. You'd like whatever animal I turn into, wouldn't you? A promiscuous narcissist can't have extreme emotions. You have to like me myself. But as soon as she finished speaking, she felt something was wrong. Her limbs went stiff, and she started babbling nonsense. I mean, you like all animals. That kind of affection is too broad. Affection should be directed at a single, independent individual. But I have developed feelings for you. The arrogant and wealthy crown prince turned out to be a love-struck fool in secret. To get the elf girl who was 3 years older than him, he pretended to be weak, pretended to be innocent. He even knelt down to be her little puppy. But the girl's sentence, "You are not my type," deeply pierced his heart. Just now, the crown prince finally confessed. He domineeringly pinned the girl beneath him. I seem to have developed special feelings for you. The girl stared at him blankly. Such tenderness was like water, completely different from the perverted murderer before. You really are cute. I can't get enough of you. Hearing this, Eileen cracked. So it was still because of her animal appearance. She stood up excitedly. To like someone, you need to like the person themselves. Wait. As soon as she said it, Eileen felt something was off. Was this him confessing or her confessing? But then she thought of something. Ours should be considered friendship between friends, right? The man ignored her, having already sketched out an entire melodramatic plot in his head. You actually want me to fall in love with you? How abrupt. Eileen was deeply shocked by his turning the tables. Clearly, he was the one who said he liked her. So why did it now seem like she was the one throwing herself at him? The man gently plucked a petal. As long as they are animals, I can fall in love with them instantly, because they're always under my control. As long as I give enough love, they will open their hearts to me. However, to Eileen, this sounded like he simply wanted to keep animals as pets. Yet, in reality, he didn't keep any animals. This made Eileen very curious. The man smiled at her. Because the only one I want to keep is you. Eileen was startled by his words. She didn't want to become a canary in a cage. She tentatively asked the man, then how should feelings for humans be treated? He pondered for a moment and spoke slowly. To love someone means giving everything for her, including one's life. Eileen didn't expect him to be such a romantic, but he was only 19. If you're not prepared to give everything for love, then simply don't start. Do you hate me? The girl was slightly stunned by his sudden change of topic. How could I? But speaking of which, why do you keep pressing me? Leaving aside like or dislike, from the very beginning, you were my type. Hearing this, the man was shocked and somewhat disappointed. It felt as if he had lost something in his heart. The girl felt a bit embarrassed by his stare, afraid he would go berserk and fall into darkness again. The man strode forward. He cupped the girl's face in his hands. What did you say? Say it again. Seeing this face up close once more, her cheeks couldn't help but turn completely red, but she still repeated that sentence. Thump, thump. At this moment, Eileen's heart beat uncontrollably. This wasn't making her heart flutter. It was practically naked violence. Every time, he used that handsome face to seduce her. But immediately, dense clusters of red spider lilies sprouted beneath their feet. The girl was stunned by this scene. Just because she said she didn't like him, was he going to drag her into darkness with him? But the next second, the newly appeared red spider lilies suddenly withered. Looking up, she found a man looking at her tenderly. So this guy was teasing her again. But then she realized something else. This peach tree was actually created by His Highness. Because it was too close to nature, she hadn't noticed it immediately. But she didn't know what the language of peach blossoms was, or why the atmosphere had become so warm. From now on, how about your pet name be Song? Hearing this, Eileen looked at him with disdain. No matter how you heard it, it sounded like a dog's name. Then let's call you Golden Light. Eileen didn't understand the difference. Because your real name means a dream woven from golden light. So for short, it's Golden Light. Although her heart fluttered a little, the girl still ruthlessly rejected him. You should just call me Eileen from now on. Hearing this, the man got a bit haughty again. Then you say my name first. Eileen was speechless at his childish behavior. She wanted to muddle through, but suffered the man's death stare. Calling his name in this situation made her feel very shy. But she immediately clenched her fists and gritted her teeth, softly calling out his name. Hearing this, the man finally revealed a satisfied smile. Well done, Song. The crown prince, worth hundreds of billions, didn't love his kingdom. Didn't even love his father, but fell in love with a dorky elf girl. She was also a sickly little foodie. He wanted to devour her completely, leaving not even crumbs behind. Just now, in order to truly be with the girl, the man decided to help her leave the dream. But with the intervention of the guardian spirit, most of his deep memories had been erased. All he could think of now was the girl's cute face and the happy times they had spent together these past few days. Just being together made him feel a warmth he had never felt before. But his sentence, "Hurry up and fall in love with me," left the girl's heart racing and at a loss. To avoid showing her love-struck side, she used thinking as an excuse to quickly flee. Watching her retreating figure, the man smiled unconsciously. Although he meant to tease her a bit, her flustered look was truly intoxicating. He casually grabbed a petal, fantasizing about their days after leaving. She must be extremely cute in reality too, right? But just then, Eileen appeared before him again, looking dorky. Your Highness, do you still have attachments to the past? The man looked at her helplessly. She clearly said she'd figure it out herself, but in the end, she still couldn't avoid the past. However, even though Eileen put on a well-behaved and cute appearance, the man still unhesitatingly refused to answer. But she hadn't planned on getting the answer from the man in one go anyway. Because in previous cases, entering a client's heart required various guidance from her. She gently placed her hand on the man's chest, putting on a gentle face. Your emotions are the key to opening the dream. Knowing your past will be of great help for us to leave here. Besides, it's just the two of us here. I will quietly be a qualified listener. Hearing this, the man was silent for a long while, his lips moving slightly. Seeing this, Eileen was overjoyed. Was he finally going to reveal his heart to her? But the next second, before she could react, she was kicked out once again. It turned out that, without knowing when it started, the man had developed severe paranoia. He often couldn't distinguish between reality and dreams. Everything familiar before his eyes emitted a strange aura. He didn't know if the world had changed or if he had fallen into a hazy illusion. The only thing he knew was that the world he tried so hard to reach could no longer be touched. He clenched his fists in despair time and again, only to slowly release them in helplessness. Over time, he gradually lost his judgment, not knowing if he was even still alive. He never saw a human face clearly again. Even the maids around him seemed stained with ink. No matter how hard he stared, there was not a shred of improvement. Instead, the disappearing parts expanded further, until he could no longer see anything clearly, only able to distinguish them by voice and clothing. He never expected that a person could go mad in silence. Now, he was like a cog, gradually losing himself in rebellion and submission. He wanted to find proof of being alive, but was powerless. He could only gradually go insane as time passed. Eventually, the Emperor turned into a headless dragon, roaring madly in his ears. Though no one was around, the room was filled with thousands of words. He fell asleep in emptiness time and again, and woke up in terror time and again. Finally, he fantasized that he was a perverted murderer, but finding no target to vent on brought him close to a breakdown. He only wished he had never existed, to just die in his sleep like this. But when he woke up again, he was back under that peach tree. He slowly sat up, his mind full of the girl's silhouette. Because of her accidental intrusion, his originally dim world regained its radiance. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile slightly. That girl really made one miss her. But suddenly, the girl's voice came from behind. Turning around, it was that dorky, silly fox. That cute appearance excited the man. He scooped her up and gently leaned against her face. I will protect you forever. So please don't leave me, okay? But before he finished speaking, the fox turned into golden light and dissipated into the air. Looking at his empty embrace, the man felt an indescribable loss in his heart. He was truly afraid this was their last meeting. Even more afraid that the girl would hate him because of his recklessness. But the next scene stunned him. A small deer appeared tremblingly before him. Immediately, the girl's angry voice followed. "Your Highness, I told you, if you kick me out of the dream, I will be in pain." To protect the girl he loved, the man decided not to sleep anymore, returning to that world that had long gone rotten. It turned out that from the very beginning, he had suffered from severe schizophrenia. In his world, his father turned into a headless dragon roaring madly, and the maids were like faceless figures covered in ink. So whenever the past was discussed, he would unconsciously switch to his second personality, tyrannical. And the only one who could heal him was the girl before him. But this girl would soon be executed by his father. Because of him, he would absolutely not allow such a thing to happen. Being with her was the only joy of his life. Therefore, he decided to play a shocking game of chess. From the gods and demons above to the common people below, all were part of his chess game. Just now, Eileen, who had been kicked out of the dream, came angrily before the man. "Your Highness, I said that if I am kicked out by the master's subjective will, whether in reality or in a dream, I will be in great pain." Seeing the girl's weak state, the man's heart ached. He gently picked the girl up, promising that nothing similar would ever happen again, because he had already let go of the past and no longer feared the lonely darkness. As long as the girl could stay by his side, he would have no regrets even if he hid in darkness forever. He sincerely apologized to the girl. The girl also earnestly stated that there absolutely could not be a next time, because the deadline given by the emperor was almost up. By then, not only her, but even the remaining Dissentia people would face a catastrophe. Actually, the man knew clearly in his heart that his slumber wasn't due to any curse, but because of despair towards life. Living for 20 years in a world where he couldn't see faces clearly caused him pain every single moment. The man held the girl tightly in his arms, declaring he would never let that happen. In fact, the girl also knew the destruction of Dissentia was nothing more than an excuse for the emperor to appease the people. He didn't want people to associate it with retribution for his usurpation of power, as that would only shake his authority. But as long as the man woke up, all of this could be easily solved. Yet even then, he couldn't guarantee the girl's life. The emperor would absolutely not allow anyone who knew his secret to live in this world. He would most likely silence everyone who knew about this matter. After all, killing a few commoners wouldn't cause a ripple in his heart. But the man couldn't accept that. The girl was the only light in his life. Even if it meant breaking with the emperor, he wouldn't hesitate. But that wouldn't change the plight of the Dissentia people. So he smiled at the girl. "Attribute my slumber to the curse of Dissentia." At first, the girl didn't react, thinking she had heard wrong. Then she looked at the man in surprise. Was this a rhythm of dragging everyone to die together? Actually, the man wanted to use the divine oracle to declare to the public that only a Dissentia person who inherited the artisan's ability could break the curse. And the only thing the girl had to do was wake him up. That way, everyone would be convinced by this answer. Then, to round out his previous lies, the emperor wouldn't easily kill the remnants of the Dissentia tribe anymore. Hearing this, the girl also realized that indeed there was no better outcome than this. Looking at the girl's cute appearance, the man slowly stood up. "For you, I am willing to do anything." Gazing at the man's gentle demeanor, Eileen was completely captivated. She decided right then that no matter what tragic experiences the man revealed next, she would comfort him well. But to her surprise, the man had no intention of revealing his past. Instead, he gently stroked her jet black hair. Then, under the girl's incredulous gaze, he slowly kissed her fair forehead. "I think I've fallen in love with you." Smooch. To save the girl's life, the crown prince, who had slept for years, finally woke from his dream. And this was also the first time he wanted to protect the person he loved with all his might. Just now, Eileen confessed her mission to the crown prince. If she didn't wake the boy up in a few days, the emperor would not only kill her, but her clansmen would also be implicated. Hearing these words, the crown prince finally realized his own feelings. His right hand gently lifted the girl's face. "I think I've fallen for you." Eileen didn't react. The boy then kissed her forehead again. In an instant, countless white lights flashed out of nowhere. The dreamscape suddenly became extremely illusory. Eileen knew what revealing his heart meant for the Crown Prince. She also knew how scared he was at this moment. "I will always be with you, whether in reality or in a dream." The Crown Prince nodded with a slightly flushed face. "Then you can't go back on your word later." The white light swallowed the two of them at this moment. Meanwhile, in reality, two plumes of black smoke rose. The boy opened his eyes little by little. The surrounding scene still appeared in black and white. Although his body, having slept for years, couldn't quite adapt yet, he could clearly sense another breath, as well as that familiar scent from the dream. Just then, the object beside him moved a few times. The Crown Prince hurriedly turned his head. For some reason, even though it was a black and white world, he could uniquely see the colors on her. Eileen also sat up at this time. The two looked at each other, neither speaking. The girl unconsciously felt a bit nervous. Her mind kept flashing back to the scene of his confession just now. Thinking of calling the imperial physician first, the Crown Prince suddenly pulled her in front of him, his arms wrapped around her waist. The atmosphere instantly became extremely ambiguous. The boy didn't shy away, staring straight at her. Eileen's face was so red it looked like it could bleed. Following this sequence of events, was he thinking of kissing her again? Although the two were always like this in the dream, this was the real world right now. Fortunately, the servants nearby noticed something was up and called for the imperial physician in time. Seeing the position the two were in, the assistant was furious and started making a huge scene. The imperial physician also pretended to be serious in front of the Crown Prince. You couldn't tell at all that he was a pervert in private. The noise of their bickering added some life to the room. But the Crown Prince didn't care in the slightest, because he was still the same as before, unable to see people's faces or colors. He could only guess identities based on clothing and voices. But what was going on with her? In the darkness, she alone was shining brightly. He waved over the knight standing nearby and asked about the deadline set by his father, the Emperor. The knight respectfully stated that there were 3 days left. Hearing him speak, the Crown Prince finally recognized who he was. He breathed a sigh of relief and told him to inform the Emperor that he had awakened, but not to mention anything else. He would report the rest to his father himself. Then, using rest as an excuse, he asked everyone to leave the room, but kept Eileen behind. As the door closed, leaving only the two of them in the room, Eileen was so nervous she didn't know what to do with her hands. Although she could do whatever she wanted in the dream, the difference in their status in reality was truly vast. The Crown Prince didn't care about that. He gently crooked his finger, and the girl obediently walked over to him. The next second, the Crown Prince grabbed the ribbon tying her hair. As the ribbon was pulled off, Eileen's hair cascaded down. Smelling that familiar scent, the boy's face flushed slightly. This felt much better. The Crown Prince would never forget the scent on the girl, and that familiar body warmth. Even though this was their first meeting in reality, he still habitually pulled her onto his lap. Eileen's face instantly turned bright red. Before, she had appeared in animal forms. Such intimate actions were acceptable then. But right now, she was a human woman. This was very strange, and they were on a bed. The Crown Prince didn't understand why she was angry. Clearly, they had always been like this before, and it wasn't like they hadn't kissed. He snuggled closer to her coquettishly. "Anyway, you have to stay by my side from now on. I'm used to your warmth. I'll feel cold if you're not here." Although Eileen looked angry on the surface, she felt an indescribable happiness in her heart. "Did you chase everyone out just to do this with me?" The Crown Prince looked up helplessly. "Wanting to be alone with the person I like, isn't that only natural?" Hearing this, the girl pretended to look around. "Who do you like?" Seeing her act like this, the Crown Prince was about to die of frustration. He held her head with both hands. He told her again and again, "I like you, Song. I really like you." Eileen was startled by his sudden assertiveness. Only now did she confirm that the Crown Prince truly had romantic feelings for her. But why? His future was to be the Emperor of the Empire, while she was just a lowly member of a different race. She had struggled so hard to carve out a path for her people to survive. If the Emperor found out about this, what would happen to her people? Fortunately, his feelings for me shouldn't be that deep. Suppressing the impulse in her heart, she said coldly, "We like should be those animals. As for me, it's just a temporary illusion." Saying such words was somewhat hurtful. The Crown Prince wanted to stop her from continuing, but the girl wouldn't listen at all, just rambling on. "I told you to stop talking." Hearing the boy shout this loudly, Eileen finally snapped out of it. The Crown Prince didn't know what to do to make her understand his feelings. Actually, he really wanted to pin the girl to the bed and tell her over and over, "I want to keep looking at you until your appearance is carved into my heart. That way, even if darkness swallows me again one day, I can find you again in the dark." He really wanted to tell her this, but if he said it, she would probably be very scared. Looking up and thinking for a moment, the boy wanted to find another way for her to accept him. Then he turned his head and looked at the girl gently. His left hand gently caressed her ear. "I plan to keep meeting you until I truly fall in love with you." The two were in the heat of romance. But meanwhile, on the other side, the knights had locked the assistant and the imperial physician in a dungeon. The assistant didn't understand why they were being locked up when the crown prince had clearly been awakened. The imperial physician, on the other hand, saw things clearly. Precisely because the crown prince has awakened, the emperor now wants to silence witnesses. As long as we disappear, the curse removal will be treated as if it never happened. Hearing this, the assistant was most worried about Eileen. But with things as they were, what could he do? Seeing him so depressed, the imperial physician pulled out a few dolls from behind his back to put on a show for him. And the general content of the show, that was the crown prince snatching Eileen away from the assistant, and then living happily ever after with her. Good grief. It would have been better not to perform it. After seeing it, he wanted to kill this imperial physician right now. Seeing that it was about time, the imperial physician stood up, his eyes instantly becoming cold. "Let's go. I'll take you and escape." As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of flames shot from his hand, instantly melting the cell door. The assistant was terrified. If he had such means, why didn't he use them earlier? The green-haired man reverted to his cynical demeanor and said, "If you want to live long, it's better to keep some trump cards." Although the two had escaped, that when they sneaked back to the crown prince's room, the assistant's heart was completely shattered. Because at this moment, Eileen was embracing the crown prince on the bed. And by the looks of it, they were about to kiss. Seeing the girl, he liked hugging someone else with his own eyes. The assistant was about to explode with rage, especially since the crown prince was looking at him with a provocative gaze. Anger instantly broke through his reason. He yanked Eileen out of the boy's arms. Then he shielded her behind him. Just moments ago, the crown prince had made a sincere confession to the girl. The sudden love caught Eileen somewhat off guard. She didn't understand. With so many princesses to choose from, how could he like a wild girl like her? And that look in his eyes. He's really staring at me without any shyness. Seeing the girl blushing like this, the crown prince became even more unscrupulous. He took her small hand and rubbed it incessantly. "Can you stop staring at me? You're too handsome. My heart can't take it." Hearing this, the boy was stunned. "Are you saying that I am one of the top handsome men on the continent? Then how do I compare to that assistant of yours?" Eileen was speechless at this dummy. Without even thinking, she said, "There's no comparison between the assistant and you. That kid is just a cute boy." But the crown prince still sounded unsatisfied. "Then what about compared to the imperial physician?" Eileen suspected this kid was doing it on purpose. Using her as a magic mirror? Was he the evil queen? She gave a low, sinister laugh twice, as she forced herself to put on the sunniest smile. "You are the most handsome man in the world." Only then was the crown prince finally satisfied. "You too. You're the most beautiful girl in the world." Hearing this, Eileen's face instantly turned bright red. The boy saw that she was skeptical of his words. Before she could react, he got up and moved closer to her. "I'm serious. In my eyes, you are the most beautiful." The atmosphere became increasingly ambiguous. Seeing that things were getting a bit out of control, Eileen hurriedly slipped off the bed. Before, she had always stayed by his side in animal form, which led to a lack of distance now. He was so high above, and what was she? To think her heart would race just because of a few words from him. She wasn't worthy of this affection, especially since the crown prince had a beautiful fiancée. Although she knew the crown prince had no feelings for his fiancée, so what? She was just a commoner about to be executed. This wasn't something she should worry about. "I will keep my promise and stay with you until it's confirmed that you are fine." The crown prince didn't speak. He slowly walked up behind Eileen. Just as the girl turned around, he gently raised his right hand to cover her face. If everyone you saw looked like this, what would you do? Their heads turn into a mass of pitch black. Let alone expressions, you can't even tell what they look like. Even though those people are there to protect me, in my eyes, they look like monsters. It's as if they are waiting for the right moment to devour me. This is daily life for me. If it were you, could you still treat them as humans? Could you still like them? Hearing this, Eileen realized, so he still hadn't gotten rid of this illness. "But why would you still like me?" The crown prince's expression suddenly became shy. "Because I can only see you." Before she could react, the boy pulled her to the bedside. and he forcefully pulled her into his arms. Whether it's the paradise of dreams or the abyss with no end in sight, as long as you are here, I won't be afraid anymore. Just at this moment, the assistant and the imperial physician barged in. Without waiting for the girl to explain anything, he yanked her out of the crown prince's arms and shielded her in front of himself. Please conduct yourself with dignity, Your Highness. To protect the girl he loved, the assistant had already lost his reason. He angrily dragged Eileen out of the crown prince's embrace. Please conduct yourself with dignity, Your Highness. The atmosphere instantly became heavy, and their confrontation terrified Eileen, who was standing aside. The crown prince saw the reason at a glance. As someone who had been well-versed in the art of ruling since the age of 4, handling a kid like this was as easy as pie. Then he put on an angelic appearance. If you have something to say, just say it. The assistant was confused. His anger instantly dissipated by half. Why were you hugging Eileen? Seeing this, the crown prince slowly began to explain. Because of the curse removal. I don't know why, but I can only keep a clear head when she is by my side. And I suspect she is a descendant of the witch who left the curse 500 years ago. The assistant's brain instantly froze. Eileen was also speechless. The crown prince was actually deceiving the boy like he was a fool, but she couldn't expose him. The crown prince's acting was too deceptive, and his expression was so gentle and kind. It was hard to connect him with the cunning look he had when taking advantage of her just now. The assistant, this simpleton, was completely won over. He cried and expressed his apologies to the crown prince. Eileen was speechless. This was basically being sold and still helping count the money. A conflict was successfully resolved. The imperial physician also seized the opportunity to flatter the crown prince. The atmosphere became harmonious again. Eileen looked at the two talking and felt a bit worried in her heart. You shouldn't be able to see the imperial physician's face right now either, right? But I can't tell any difference between him and a normal person. Just then, the crown prince's gaze shifted to the girl. Then he smiled gently. Eileen's face instantly turned bright red. In this moment, she understood. So the way he looks at me and the way he looks at others really feels different. Is it because seeing my face makes him feel more at ease? The imperial physician was also a bit speechless at this scene. He was still standing right there. Yet these two were making eyes at each other. Did they not consider him a person? The crown prince was indeed very wary of this imperial physician, judging from various past events. Thought this man was extremely shrewd and had endless tricks up his sleeve. Given the emperor's nature, he should have been thrown into prison by this point. But now he appeared right before his eyes. So, in all likelihood, something he couldn't comprehend had occurred. The emperor gave Mel a few days to recover. Eileen also truly experienced the royal life. The assistant was helpless with this lazybones. She ate desserts every day, causing her to gain weight. He forced her to improve her diet and exercise daily. Hearing the two bickering, the crown prince smoothly interjected, I think she's very cute like this. The atmosphere instantly became incredibly quiet. Eileen's face turned bright red in an instant. She hadn't spoken much to the boy these past few days, not because she was shy, but because he was too arrogant. Even when eating desserts, she had to feed him herself. Tomorrow was the day to meet the emperor. The crown prince used this excuse again, wanting Eileen to sleep with him tonight. After all, with his condition, only the girl could help him. Although Eileen was a bit embarrassed, she couldn't refuse, afraid that some uncontrollable situation might occur between them. That she still invited the assistant and the imperial physician to assist from the side. The lights went out and night fell. Perhaps because she was by his side, the crown prince wasn't sleepy at all. Eileen was already incredibly sleepy. Having no choice, she crawled onto the bed bit by bit. She placed the crown prince's head on her lap and began to sing a lullaby. The girl was great in every way, but her singing was truly unbearable. Both the assistant and the imperial physician started having nightmares. The crown prince gritted his teeth and didn't speak. But the next second, the girl's hair fell onto his face. Looking at her cute sleeping face, the crown prince felt like laughing. He gently placed her on the bed. It was almost time for a showdown with his father. Actually, he was also very scared. If he couldn't protect Eileen, then this time he would personally kill his own father. He leaned his body closer to her bit by bit. This was the first time the crown prince had seen her so quiet. The room was incredibly silent, as if he could only hear his own heartbeat. As if possessed, the boy lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Even if I have to give everything, I will protect you this time. to let the girl live. The crown prince was willing to use his own life to save her. But even so, he wasn't sure if the emperor would show mercy to Eileen. If it really came to that, he might really kill his own father with his own hands. Before departing, he spent one last night sleeping beside Eileen. She said she would sing him to sleep, but after singing just 2 lines, the girl had already fallen asleep. Yet the crown prince wasn't sleepy in the slightest. Gazing at her cute face, the boy felt a burst of annoyance. Is being good-looking such a big deal? Seeing that they were about to leave soon. Yet he hadn't slept for a single second. Thinking of tomorrow's danger, the crown prince couldn't help but feel anxious and have a headache. Can I save her? If I can't protect the girl, this time I will personally kill my own father. Perhaps that wouldn't be a bad thing. If there's no way to protect her, Mel, might as well kill everyone, including myself. The crown prince's eyes instantly turned blood red, and the aura of darkness grew thicker. Just then, Eileen's sudden sleep-talking happened to wake the boy from his descent. I want to eat pudding. Pudding. The boy curled the corners of his mouth, thinking about eating even in your dreams. Actually, up until now, the crown prince was still a bit dazed. He was actually willing to give himself up for a girl. Time ticked by. He just watched her sleeping form motionless like that. The sky brightened slightly by that ray of morning light. The boy gently leaned over and kissed her forehead. When the girl opened her eyes again, the sky was already bright. But the crown prince was not by her side. She slowly stretched. Suddenly, she realized a man was clinging to her. A scream echoed through the entire room. The assistant saw this scene and explained to Eileen. Because the crown prince went to see the emperor, this actor playing the crown prince had to stay with them. Meanwhile, on the other side, the crown prince strode towards the emperor's bedchamber. He used to be his father's favorite son, but because of the teachings in the art of ruling, he lost all the light in the world. What is the meaning of a royal family that survives through killing? And after killing all one's closest kin to reach the peak, how is the scenery there any different from now? All along, the crown prince lacked courage, so he could only erode himself, erase everyone's faces, and finally flee in defeat. But that light, which should have been extinguished, had awakened him once more. So to protect her, the boy would absolutely not run away again. Your son, Mel, greets the emperor. Both father and son were somewhat distant. The crown prince quietly listened to the breathing around him. While eating with his son, there were actually 4 guards hiding around them. Perhaps his father would really kill him today. Their communication didn't go as smoothly as imagined. To prevent Eileen from being executed, the crown prince lied, claiming the girl was from the lineage of the witch from 500 years ago, and that his illness was only alleviated when she was present. Gritting his teeth to completely lift this curse, only her fresh blood will work. Such clumsy acting. The emperor naturally saw through it at a glance. He proposed simply drawing all of Nini's blood to keep in reserve. The crown prince panicked the moment he heard this. With no other choice, he could only reveal an extremely secret piece of information. The imperial physician's master was the empire's greatest mage. He had predicted that the magic in the world would completely wither within 30 years. Hearing this, the emperor showed shock for the first time. The boy continued speaking, explaining that magic was the pillar of the empire's military force. Once magic was lost, their combat power would be greatly diminished, and the common people who relied on magic for their livelihood would also fall into chaos. That would be the beginning of the Empire's nightmare. But there was a method to stop this turmoil. That was the Dalmatians. Their innate abilities were not bound by magic. Furthermore, a small island in the south would react to the bodies of the Dalmatian people. Perhaps relying on them could replenish the world's missing magic. This was the Crown Prince's trump card, intended for use when he ascended the throne himself. But for Nini's sake, he had to play it early. The Emperor harbored doubts about this seemingly baseless claim and still refused to let the girl go. The Crown Prince was utterly disappointed in this father of his. He was just thinking of giving up on persuasion and using force, but the Emperor instead looked calm, seeing that his son could not cough up any more bargaining chips. He waved his hand in the air, and a golden quill appeared out of nowhere. Although these matters still needed confirmation, the Emperor decided to spare her life for now. After all, these Dalmatians still had value to be exploited. He drafted a new contract. Actually, the emperor was quite happy. Although his son was still fragile in both body and mind, it had truly been a long time since he had seen him speak so bravely and loudly. The crown prince was also a bit dazed. Just a moment ago, he thought the negotiations had collapsed, but in the blink of an eye, things had gone according to his wishes. His voice was no longer angry as before, as he hastily tried to get the emperor to add a few clauses. The matter came to a close. Nini's people now had a foundation to settle down and live in peace, and her life was considered saved. But the happiness lasted only a few seconds. When she saw the terms of the new contract, the girl truly wanted to tear that perverted prince apart alive. These requirements, wasn't this treating her as his wife? To survive, the girl agreed to the crown prince's perverted demands. Not only did she have to be his close companion every day, but she also had to serve him and sleep with him at night. This made Nini feel a huge headache coming on. Was the crown prince treating her as a wife? Just as she was thinking of a way to escape, the knight took out a necklace. It turned out the emperor required the girl to wear it. If she attempted to leave the palace or forcibly remove it, it would explode. Nini was instantly scared limp. But now, living under someone else's roof, what could a woman of such lowly status do? The main hall was magnificent. It was a richness the girl had never seen in her life. Two maids darted out from the side, indicating they would help her change and wash. Although Nini was very reluctant, now that the crown prince's status was restored, trembling, the complicated etiquette was unavoidable. Why? This corset. Why? It was strangling her so hard she could barely breathe. The girl hadn't expected the life of a noble lady to be this arduous. Walking to the door of the crown prince's bedchamber, Nini hesitated. It was clearly just a door, but it absolutely could not be opened without permission. This also proved the nobility of the crown prince's status. Now, to see him, she had to be exquisitely dressed, the lowliest woman and the noblest prince. This was, after all, a difference in status as vast as clouds and mud. Clearly, he was the person beside her just a few hours ago, yet seeing him now made her so nervous. The crown prince was also stunned when he saw the girl. His legs unconsciously moved him closer to her, step by step. The two were silent for a long time. The boy's face suddenly turned red. "You look breathtaking." Actually, the crown prince was tormenting Nini like this only because she would have to stay by his side in the future, and it was inevitable they would attend formal occasions together. So, she needed to gradually get used to royal attire. Of course, he also had some selfish motives, looking forward to seeing the girl dressed up. But he hadn't expected Nini could be this beautiful. Her entire makeup was exquisitely done, and her waist had become slender because of the corset. The girl flushed red under his gaze. The crown prince studied her for a while. He could see that this outfit made Nini uncomfortable. He then ordered the maids not to bind her waist anymore, to recheck her measurements, and to have the tailor customize several sets of dresses for her. This level of importance shocked even the maids. Nini was also left a bit bewildered. The maids then helped her change into a comfortable set of clothes. Although not as luxurious and dazzling as before, the sense of languor she exuded pleased the crown prince even more. The boy helped Nini tidy her clothes bit by bit, seeing the ambiguous atmosphere becoming more intense. The girl spoke up at the right moment, asking what the clauses in the contract were really about. The crown prince did not answer. Instead, his smile was unusually brilliant. The silence was deafening. Nini was somewhat helpless, but at this moment, she felt more shy than anything. The crown prince brought her to the bed and spoke. "I told you before, I can't see other people's heads, nor can I see colors. So I need you by my side to tell me what the person in front of me looks like, what clothes they are wearing, what expression they're showing. I don't know why, but as long as it's a place you've touched, it will briefly regain its original color." Although Nini had known this for a long time, thinking about it carefully now made her feel an indescribable sadness in her heart. Because to the crown prince, she was a special existence with color and a head. That was why he had developed strange feelings for her. But what about after this? If one day he returned to normal and his world was re-illuminated by light, he would discover that everything around him was so brilliant, while she was just the most ordinary one among all that extraordinariness. At that time, would he still whisper in her ear that he liked her? Nini was shocked by this sudden surge of emotion. She was actually sad because the crown prince didn't genuinely like her. This wasn't like her at all. All this time, she had used being the crown prince's fiancée as an excuse, saying she wanted to keep her distance from him. Yet in her heart, she looked forward to his various gentle words and actions. Was she being too greedy? The crown prince just watched her from the side, his eyes so timid, fearful of gain and loss. Time ticked by. Unknown how much time passed, the boy had already sunk into dreamland. Only at this moment did Nini secretly tell herself, in order not to get hurt in the future, she could not invest any more feelings. Her function was to help the crown prince's world return to normal. And after that, she would return to her original life. Just treat it as a dream of mine. The girl unintentionally discovered that the crown prince didn't truly like her. Gazing at that sleeping face, she felt an unspeakable loss in her heart. If one day the boy discovered how bright this world was, and how beautiful his fiancée was, she couldn't imagine what a miserable existence she would become in the palace. It seemed that once everything was restored, she should leave this place, return to her lowly status. A white light flashed past. Nini entered the crown prince's dream once again. The scene was the same as before. But what was strange was, why was she hanging in midair? Just then, a hand reached out and patted her. The girl stumbled and fell from the tree right into his arms. The crown prince was just as he had been in the past. No matter what form she took, he would hold Nini in his arms with a look of doting affection. Nini's claws fumbled over him for a moment. Only then did she realize she had actually turned into a sloth. Although she knew it was unlikely to enter the crown prince's dream in her own form, she didn't want to be a sloth either. Not only were her movements slow, but she also felt constantly tired and exhausted. The crown prince looked at her appearance, feeling both amused and distressed. But to make Nini happy, he specially instructed the headless maid to prepare a cake. The maid was very obedient, but the way she held the knife was simply too terrifying. Nini burrowed into the crown prince's arms in fear. Although the crown prince tried his best to comfort her, with her sloth body, if the maid really wanted to kill her, she would probably be slaughtered before she could even take a step. Nini looked at the maid's back, and a thought suddenly flashed through her mind. Since one can create things and change colors in a dream, can't we add a head to the headless maid? But due to the sloth body, she hadn't even finished half her sentence before her head began to feel heavy and groggy again. She felt that if this continued, she would soon forget even who she was. Fortunately, the crown prince fed her 2 bites of cake. This pulled her thoughts back. Recovering her wits, Nini hurriedly voiced her idea. The boy was also stunned by this whimsical idea for a while. The maid also leaned in at this moment. Do you want some cake? Even without a head. Both of them could clearly feel that she was nodding, and inexplicably, they felt she was somewhat cute. The crown prince said, try imagining the servant as a sloth. How about that? Imagining a human head is a bit difficult for you, but animals are simple. Even in a dream, we have to try to change slowly, don't we? But thinking of that image, the crown prince still felt a bit nauseous. Since it's all imagination anyway, might as well choose an antelope. Nini happily climbed onto the boy's neck. After all, having a boy willing to indulge her nonsense is a very happy thing. The crown prince was somewhat helpless, but the maid was obviously very expectant. There was no other way. The crown prince extended his left hand to block where the maid's head would be, and then began to try hard to imagine an antelope and how it would fit her. As a golden light flashed, the crown prince and Nini were both stunned on the spot, because, just as imagined, he had actually succeeded.